Hero of the Otherworldly Castle. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326, Journey to the North. Brothers, move quickly and make sure there are no problems. The king is coming soon. The train station at Shanhaiguan had already been taken over by the Jinaiwei, who arrived in advance. Yang Song, the king of a country, was going to inspect, so of course it was impossible for him to be alone with his family. He was traveling with a battalion of Jinaiwei and a regiment of imperial guards. Wang Wei and Zhao Wu were also accompanying him for protection. The imperial train was not really just Yang Song's family on it. In addition to the several carriages in the middle of the entire train, there were guard carriages in front and behind, with more than 350 Jinaiwei, as well as maids, cooks, doctors and other personnel. A regiment of imperial guards sat in two other trains, one in front and one behind, guarding Yang Song and his team, minimizing all unexpected factors. Wang Wei arrived at Shanhaiguan first and notified the guarding generals Deking and Lu Su to prepare for the reception and also to ensure Yang Song's safety. After all, the king of a country left the base camp to prevent things that should not happen. Even if Yang Song had enough control, he wanted to take this opportunity to see if anyone jumped out. Deking and other important generals such as Lu Su all came to the station to greet him. Seeing Wang Wei busy, Lu Su whispered to Deking, "General, the king is going north for inspection this time. We have to pay attention." This general knows. Deking glanced at Lu Su beside him and asked casually to himself, "I just don't know why the king is going north for inspection this time." The document sent from Xianqi City said that the king went north to inspect Shanhaiguan, an important place in the country, and he will inspect various important towns in the north when he returns. Lu Su replied, "It's just that the prince, princess and two queens also travel with the king." Lu Su didn't say the rest of the words. After all, the crime of making false remarks about the king was not small, but Deking knew what Lu Su wanted to express. Isn't it just going out to play in the name of inspection? Anyway, Shanhaiguan is as stable as a mountain in their hands, and they didn't let the spies outside the pass break into the pass, so they are not afraid of Yang Song's blame. However, Yang Song's status as a king was there, and wherever he went, there would be a lot of panic, which would inevitably disturb the people and keep Deking and Lu Su busy for a while. It was precisely because of this that Yang Song stayed in Xianqi City, unwilling to disturb the local people and make them go through a lot of trouble. This trip to the north, Yang Song also hesitated again and again. After more than a year of stable operation of the Xianshan Railway, he made up his mind to take his family north to inspect and play. When Yang Song arrived at Shanhaiguan, it was already 9 o'clock in the evening. Yang Xian and Yang Yan, who were excited all the way, were drowsy at this time. Yang Song's family set off from Xianqi City at 8 o'clock in the morning. Except for adding water once in the middle of the train, it basically ran non-stop throughout the journey. After 11 hours of travel, they finally arrived at Shanhaiguan, which was 700 kilometers away, that day. In the past, even if there were smooth roads and perfect post stations, it would take at least half a month to reach the distance of 700 kilometers. Now with the railway, it can be reached in less than a day, and if it is suitable, it can even go back and forth in a day and night. Just this one item makes the 700-kilometer distance between Shanhaiguan and Xianqi City almost zero, which can speed up the turnover of materials in Xiaguo by more than 10 times, not to mention the collateral impact, which has increased the development speed of Xiaguo by more than several times. The impact on the deployment of troops is even greater. No matter how many enemy attacks Shanhaiguan encounters, as long as it is not breached in the first time, the troops in the hinterland of Xiaguo can provide continuous support. It also makes Yang Song's control over Xiaguo increase by many times, which is why many ministers can agree and rest assured that Yang Song will go to Shanhaiguan, a relatively dangerous place. "Welcome, Your Majesty. Meet the Queen and the second Queen. Meet the Prince and the Princess." As soon as Yang Song got off the train, he saw Deking, Lu Su, Zhao Wu, Wang Wei and others waiting on the platform. Yang Song saw that it was already very dark, and his two children were also tired. Although they were not in a hurry, they were very tired after taking the train for 11 hours, especially the two children. The more excited they were during the day, the more tired they were now. So he ordered, "No need to be polite, everyone. Thank you for your hard work. It's late today. Take me and my wives to rest first. We can talk about anything tomorrow." "Yes, Your Majesty." The ministers accepted the order, and Lu Su stepped forward to lead the way and said, "Please come this way, Your Majesty." The next day, Yang Song spent the whole morning handling official business and meeting various important officials. In the afternoon, he took time to accompany his family to visit Shanhaiguan for an afternoon, and Yang Song also asked Lu Su to be his family's tour guide. Lu Su was a very competent tour guide. He introduced all the places worth visiting in Shanhaiguan, from the pass walls to the ordinary training grounds. Yang Song's family was very happy for the whole afternoon. When they returned to their residence, Xiaolan and Xiaojuan praised Lu Su. Even Yang Xian, who had just grown up, knew about Lu Su. After Yang Song's family had been touring around Shanhaiguan for a few more days, Yang Song summoned Deking and Lu Su that night and told them, "I will go to Gihua City for an inspection tomorrow." When they heard what Yang Song said, they were shocked. Lu Su hurriedly replied, "Your Majesty, Gihua City is outside the pass, and there are all kinds of people. It may not be appropriate for Your Majesty to go there for an inspection." Deking and Lu Su thought that Shanhaiguan was the end point of Yang Song's inspection. They didn't expect that Yang Song actually wanted to go out of the pass to Gihua City, the window to the outside world of Xia. Even with the strict control of the Xia Kingdom, Gihua City is a mixed city after all, and most of them are natives, so there is no order in the invisible dark place. If Yang Song gets into trouble in Gihua City, both of them will not live. So Deking also persuaded, "Your Majesty, there are too many BIE people in Gihua City. I'm afraid it will offend Your Majesty." No need to say more. Yang Song waved his hand, interrupted the two people's persuasion, and replied firmly, "I have made up my mind. No need to persuade me. Or do you not have the ability to guarantee my safety?" Yang Song's words are not light. If one of them is not answered well, Deking and Lu Su will be labeled as disregarding the safety of the king and lacking ability. "Yes, Your Majesty, we will obey your order. We will definitely die and guarantee Your Majesty's safety." When the two heard Yang Song's words, they knew that they could not persuade him anymore, so they had to bow and accept the order. But if Yang Song was really hurt by this, no matter how great the contributions of Deking and Lu Su were, they would be dead. This is really a dilemma. Chapter 327. Guests at the Tavern. In a remote alley in Gihua City, several burly men were drinking yellowish wine in a tavern called King Shu Tavern. This alley is full of people from outside the Great Wall. The tavern has a sign in Chinese characters, and there is also a wooden wine glass pattern outside the door, which is the symbol of this world's taverns. Ding, the closed door was pushed open from the outside, and the bell at the door told the owner that there was a guest, and the burly men who were drinking looked at the door. It turned out to be a thin young man, and then the burly men stopped paying attention and continued to drink and chat. "Old Zach, business is not very good today. Why are there only these people?" The young man walked to the front of the stage and greeted the owner behind him. "Old rules." At the same time, he signaled to Zach with his eyes to the unfamiliar drinkers in the tavern. When Zach heard this, he handed over a large wooden cup, shook his head lightly, and replied helplessly, "There is no way. This place is too remote, and the wine they sell is not the good wine of the Xia people. It is already very good to have these customers." By the way, Zach seemed to have thought of something, and asked the young man who was drinking slowly with the glass in his hand, "Bell, why did you come so early today? Did something happen?" Listening to the conversation between the two men, it can be seen that the two of them are very familiar with each other. Seeing this situation, several burly men who were drinking and chatting on the side were completely relieved. "Don't worry, nothing happened." Bell put down the wine glass in his hand and took a sip, then tilted his head and said, "It's just that the Xia people in the city have been very strict these days." "Strict? When have those noble Xia people not been strict?" Zack didn't take it to heart at all, but he still sighed. If the city wasn't strictly managed, there weren't those noble lords, and there was so much wealth, we wouldn't have moved so far away. That's true. Belle took another sip of the dark wine in the glass and nodded. Old Zack, I'm not saying anything bad about you, but you named this tavern Clearwater, but it's not clear at all. When are you going to get some good Zyre wine? Do you think this wine is not tasty? Zack glanced at Belle sideways when he heard this, pointed at the gate and replied, then go out and turn right. There's a lot of good Zyre wine over there, whatever you want to drink. Hearing this, Belle smiled and said, it's because I can't afford it. The good wines from Zyre country are delicious, but too expensive. It would be better if they were cheaper. After saying this, he smacked his lips, as if he was savoring the taste. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to drink. He picked up the wine glass and took 2 big sips. Unexpectedly, he choked because he drank too quickly. He kept coughing, and it seemed that he was almost out of breath. Slow down, although this wine is not delicious, there is no need to be like this, right? Seeing Belle coughing hard, Zack handed him a glass of water, but he was teasing him. Belle took a sip of the water and waited for a long time before he caught his breath. His first words were, your wine is too bad. Look at me. Get lost. Zack replied unhappily, didn't I tell you? I'm not stopping you. If you want to drink good wine, don't come to my shabby tavern. Old Zack, can't I be wrong? Belle saw Zack, who seemed really angry, and smiled. How about this? If you have anything you want to know, I will provide you with a piece of information for free. Is that okay? A piece of information for free. Pay off your wine bill with me first. Although Zack was unforgiving in his words, he was actually very concerned about Belle's promise. Is it really any information? That's right. Seeing that Zack was really moved, Belle first affirmed the other party's question arrogantly, but then he seemed to think of something, and added hesitantly, of course if I know it, there are still the old rules, you understand? Old man, I thought you were breaking the rules. Zack mocked Belle, and then asked, don't wait until later, I really have a question I want to know. If you tell me, not only will today's matter be settled, but the wine money you owed me before will also be written off. Really? Belle jumped up from the stool happily, but he immediately warned, don't ask if it's against the rules. Don't worry, it's not a big deal. Zack walked out of the counter and walked towards the back room with Belle. Not long after, both of them walked out of the room with satisfied smiles. Before leaving, Belle turned around and told Zack, you have to keep your word. Haha. When did I, Zack, break my word? Zack walked back to the counter with great satisfaction, while Belle waved his hand with his back to Zack, and walked out of the pub. The burly men in the tavern saw Belle walk out of the tavern, signaled to each other, stood up and shouted to Zach, boss, check out. Zach saw this scene, although he was a little worried about Belle, but he still stepped forward and replied to the men, thank you, a total of 30 Zyre coins. A big man took out a banknote from his arms, looked at it, and then handed it to Zach, and ignored Zach's next words, and walked out of the tavern with his companions. Zach looked at the 1-cent Zyre coin in his hand, and was even more worried about Belle's safety, but he was just a tavern owner, and could only pray secretly. Belle had no idea that the crisis behind him was about to catch up, but walked leisurely in the alley, humming the song he heard from the Zyre people. When passing by a door, a hand suddenly stretched out from it and covered Belle's mouth, dragged him into the room, and the door was immediately closed, as if nothing had happened. The big men not far away suddenly found that their target had disappeared. They rushed up and looked around. After seeing that their behavior attracted the attention of passers-by, they could only leave helplessly. Woo woo. Belle struggled with a terrified face, fearing that he would be persecuted. He knew that the seemingly stable and prosperous Gihua city was managed by the Zyre people, but there was still a dark and chaotic side. After all, Gihua city was an integrated city and a trade window for the Zyre country to the outside world. As long as it did not affect the order and trade of Gihua city and the lives of the people of the Zyre country, Zhao Yi would turn a blind eye. Just when Belle was afraid, the hand covering him soon loosened, and a very familiar voice came from behind. Okay, those people are gone. Chapter 328, Changing Times. Ahem, it's you, Tom. Bell then realized who was behind him. He took 2 deep breaths and asked, "What are you, a big boss, doing?" "What?" Tom opened the door and walked back, replying unhappily, "To save your life, of course." "Help?" After hearing Tom's words, Bell remembered what he had heard Tom's words, and said with both surprise and fear, "You mean?" and pointed outside the door. "That's it, what else?" Tom poured Bell a glass of wine, sat down and drank it, and replied, "What trouble have you gotten into again? You are lucky to meet me, otherwise you will have to think about the consequences yourself." "How should I know? Anyway, I have been in trouble all the time." Bell was not polite either. He sat opposite Tom, picked up his glass of wine, smelled it and drank it down in one gulp. After exhaling the smell of wine, he sighed. "Zyre country's wine is still delicious and strong. Thanks, Tom." After the effect of the alcohol wore off, Bell thanked him. "You, the big boss, are really nice." "Okay." Tom picked up the glass and took a sip gently. He said nonchalantly, "You are lucky. By the way, you should be quiet these days. The Zyre people have been checking strictly recently, and all kinds of people have come out." "Thanks for the reminder." Bell thought of the strangers he saw in the alley tavern, and replied thoughtfully, "What's the matter? Who is so blind that drank too much and offended the Zyre people?" Bell said this because there was a person who didn't know what was good for him. He drank 2 teals of wine and went to a store opened by a Zyre nationality to buy something. He didn't pay and even got angry while drunk, and even beat the Zyre nationality store owner into the clinic. This was a hot trouble. When Zhao Yi learned about this, he immediately ordered the city gates to be closed, and the murderer was thoroughly investigated in the city. He also took this opportunity to crack down on the murderer in the city for a period of time. Of course, the murderer was escorted to the government office within an hour. Under Zhao Yi's order, a public trial was held in the largest square in the planning city. In front of many people who came to inquire, the prisoner's crime and sentence were read out, beheaded. As soon as the sentence fell, the prisoner was beheaded by a soldier in full view of the public without giving him a chance to appeal or speak. The blood splashed all over the natives standing in the front row. From then on, the Zyre nationality became a noble person in the planning city. Before this, although no one dared to provoke the Zyre people because of their status, some natives still criticized them behind their backs. However, after this, they did not even dare to have this idea, for fear that drinking too much would cause trouble. Zhao Yi did this for the safety of the people of Zyre and Gihua City. If this matter was left alone, wouldn't everyone rush to provoke the people of Zyre in the future? If this is the case, even if the people don't say anything to him, Yang Song will not forgive him and let him eat and eat. Because Yang Song built Gihua City not to let the people suffer, but to seek benefits for the country and the people. So Zhao Yi knew Yang Song's temper that put the people first, and he knew what to do was right. Sure enough, when Zhao Yi's actions spread back to Zyre, and reached Yang Song's ears, he was trusted by the people of Zyre in the entire planning city, allowing the people of Zyre to come here, to do business with peace of mind, and even received a commendation from Yang Song. So at this time, Gihua City suddenly started to conduct strict inspections, and Bell couldn't help but think so. Hearing Bell's inquiry, Tom shook his head and said, "No, since the incident of planning the square, who dares to provoke those Zyre people now? Even if I meet them, I will avoid them." "Okay. What do you mean it's you?" Bell completely ignored Tom's help just now and said bluntly, "I know that even those noble lords who are arrogant outside have to behave themselves when they come to Gihua City, let alone a small leader like you. You kid really don't know what's good for you." Tom was helpless with Bell, but who let the other party know his identity by accident, and it was also his fault for not being cautious. But Bell's identity was not simple, and neither of them could do anything to the other, and neither of them was much better than the other. Bell smiled and said, "Tom, I know you are doing this for my own good, but I have a piece of news to tell you, so that you will know that helping me will not be a loss." Tom asked curiously, "What news?" "If I know it, you kid, don't even think about asking me to help you in the future." Tom is a man who eats this bowl of rice. In Gihua City, what does he know, except the affairs of the Zyre people? Bell did not answer immediately, but walked to the door, stuck his head out and looked around. closed the door tightly, walked to the chair in front of Tom and sat down, propped up the table with his arm, and pretended to be mysterious. Do you know? I heard that an important person named King in Zyre is going to Shanhaiguin for inspection. After so many years, they still know the name of Shanhaiguin. Even some domestic affairs of Zyre, they have also found out a lot, but there is no detailed and specific information. And even if they find out something, they don't know what the words and the information mean. After all, they have never seen it with their own eyes. Even if they are told that there is a kind of car that runs very fast called train, they can't know what a train is and how it runs just from a name. After Zyre entered the industrial age, the entire country and society were changing at an astonishing speed. Whether it was food, clothing, housing, transportation, or ideological cognition, the transformation of the people of Zyre was visible. Let all this quickly move closer to Yang Song's previous world, so that Yang Song had a sense of reality and accomplishment in witnessing history, which had a great impact on him, the ministers, and the people's thoughts. This is also the reason why the newly recruited people must undergo training. Therefore, Zyre's control of intelligence has changed in a direction. As long as the actual photos and technologies are not circulated, some names and nouns are not so strictly controlled. However, the spread of the news of Yang Song's inspection was a dereliction of duty. Maybe this is not a major event in Zyre, but for the outside of the pass, this is a big or small event. King? What's this name? Tom thought carefully, and didn't find such a person in his memory, so he had to ask, what does it have to do with our planning city? Bell sat up straight, spread his hands and said, I don't know about this, but there is a piece of news that really concerns us. This is what I want to say. Chapter 329, City in Turbulence. Stop talking nonsense. What's the news? Tom saw that Bell didn't get to the point, so he urged him with the wine jug. Bell saw the wine jug in Tom's hand, his throat moved, and he looked at his empty glass eagerly, but seeing that Tom didn't say anything, he had to speak quickly. I heard that Zygo is going to hold a celebration party for this. Is this okay? Fill it up for me. Bell said hurriedly, and picked up the wine glass, but after waiting for a long time, Tom didn't move. He looked over, and saw that Tom had put down the wine jug, and was stroking his chin in deep thought, because of his words. Seeing this good opportunity, Bell grabbed the wine jug and quickly filled himself a glass, and drank it in one gulp, as if he was afraid that the other party would grab it. Tom was awakened by Bell's action. When he came to his senses, he saw Bell's anxious look, and couldn't help shaking his head with a little laughter. Just now Tom was thinking, the Zyre people actually held a celebration party for a person who came to inspect. What role does this person play, and what benefits can he get from this incident? Unexpectedly, Bell did such a thing in a moment of distraction. He continued, this pot of wine can be yours, but you have to answer me a question. If you want to know who the person called the king is, don't ask. I told you, I don't know. Bell seemed to know what the other party wanted to ask. He held the pot, and didn't let go. He continued, if you want to know when the celebration party will be held in Gihua City, then I can tell you. When? Tom regretted asking this the moment he asked it. Sure enough, Bell proudly raised his right hand holding the pot and shook it, meaning that the pot of wine would belong to him. Tom looked at Bell's look and thought that he would not be able to get back the valuable wine, so Tom nodded helplessly and agreed. Seeing this, Bell was very satisfied, and he answered without delay, tonight. Tonight. So soon. Tom was shocked when he heard this. Doesn't this leave him no extra time to prepare? Bell ignored Tom's surprise and regret, but stood up and staggered to the door. When he opened the door, he turned to Tom who was still racking his brains and said, by the way, I'm sending you a message. You're not the only one who knows this news. Haha. Tom saw Bell leaving with a laugh, frowned and thought for a while, stood up and walked to the inner room, picked up a pen and paper and wrote quickly, and soon left the room quickly, came to the bustling street, and quickly blended into the crowd. Governor, there is news from Shanhaiguin. The king has arrived at Shanhaiguin half an hour ago. Zhao Yi heard the report from his men, and nodded to confirm. I know. Give orders to strengthen the inspection of the whole city. I don't want any accidents to happen at this time. Yes, Governor. The men saluted Zhao Yi with a fist, and retreated as ordered. Since Yang Song learned about Zhao Yi's achievements in Gihua City, he officially appointed Zhao Yi as the governor of Gihua City, fully responsible for all government affairs of Gihua City, and let the city guards of Gihua City obey his orders. Even in emergencies, they can urgently apply for support from Shan Haiguan. Yang Song accepted Zhao Yi's fate because he saw Zhao Yi's loyalty to Xia State and his strong ability, so he let Zhao Yi take the position of governor. In addition, this was also a reward for Zhao Yi. Zhao Yi's order was quickly implemented by the city guards and security personnel, making the outsiders in Gihua City uneasy, and those with criminal records were even more frightened. At 9 o'clock in the evening, brilliant fireworks exploded in the night sky of Gihua City. The blooming flowers of the night sky and the flowers of fire made the natives of Gihua City stare straight, and they couldn't believe the scene in front of them. The beautiful scenery, that seemed like a miracle, made the uninformed natives kneel on the ground and worship the blooming fireworks. Only a few people who knew the news guessed that this was Xiaoguo's celebration after being shocked, but they still couldn't believe the magnificent scenes. Xiaoguo actually had such power that it made the night bloom with flames and the darkness appear bright. Such a country made them not know how to fight against it. Perhaps the only way was to make friends with it. Tom stood at the door, staring at the fireworks in the sky in a daze. Suddenly, a particularly large, bright, and beautiful firework burst into the night sky, which scared him. After these fireworks, the night sky returned to calm, as if the short period of time just now was all an illusion. If he hadn't seen the panicked and ignorant passers-by on the street, and smelled the pungent smell that fell from the sky, he would have thought he had a beautiful and terrible dream. Tom. Belle rushed out from the night, ran to Tom anxiously, leaned on his knees and panted, and didn't say the next sentence for a long time. "What's wrong with you?" Tom had already come back to his senses at this time, and looked at Belle in confusion. After waiting for a while, Belle finally caught his breath, and stood up straight. He pointed to the sky, and then to the end of the street, and said in horror, "Run, the Xia people are arresting people everywhere. Run, I didn't do anything, why should I run?" Although Tom said this, he already had a bad premonition in his heart. Sure enough, Belle urged, "Don't say anything more, run quickly, otherwise it will be too late." Then he took Tom's hand, and ran into Tom's room, and opened a door from the other side. When the door opened, a loud noise came into the ears of the two. It turned out that this was a tavern, which was Tom's business. The tavern sold local wine and a small amount of Xia country liquor. Tom stood at the door and stopped Belle, who wanted to go in, and asked seriously, "What's going on? Tell me clearly." After all, the tavern is very lively now because of his advanced preparation. Such good business is not common. He can't close down just because of Belle's words. Seeing that he couldn't pull Tom away, Belle had to explain anxiously and quickly, "Xiaoguo is imposing martial law throughout the city. If you encounter those people, they will be arrested without saying a word. I saw the yellow-haired man in the west of the city being arrested with my own eyes. Those people." Tom was very hesitant when he heard this word. He was not sure that the Xiaoguo people had known his identity. After thinking for a while, he decided not to run away and just went about business as usual. Because if he ran away at this time, wouldn't he be confessing himself? And if the Xiaoguo people wanted to arrest him, he would have nowhere to run, even if he wanted to. So Tom told Belle his decision and his thoughts by the way, which made Belle stunned and didn't know what to do. "You kid, did you really see it clearly?" Tom saw Belle stunned and had a rough guess in his mind. He couldn't help but asked angrily, "Do you know why the yellow-haired man was arrested?" In fact, Belle saw that the yellow-haired man in the west of the city was not arrested because of his identity, but because when the fireworks bloomed in the night, he took advantage of the chaos of the crowd to add fuel to the fire, so he was arrested by the city guards who were patrolling here. However, because Huang Mao had another identity and Belle happened to see Huang Mao being caught, Belle, who was cautious, had extra speculations. After all, if he was not cautious and timid, he would not have survived this long. Chapter 330 Arrival at the Mall. A few days later, when Zhao Yi received the news that Yang Song was going to visit Gihua City, he felt at a loss for a moment. What kind of place is this Gihua City? To put it nicely, it is the foreign trade window of Xia State. In fact, it is a city managed by Zaya State and inhabited by indigenous people. The indigenous people occupy more than 9 floors, and most of the Zaya people who remain are just businessmen. In such a place, no matter how well he manages it, after all, there are too many outsiders, and it is difficult to take good care of it. And Yang Song, the king of a country, suddenly visited. If something goes wrong, he can hardly redeem his guilt, even if he is cut into pieces. But since he received this news, it means that this is a foregone conclusion. Even if he wants to persuade him, it is too late. If it is not now evening, he guessed that Yang Song might be on his way. It seems that we need to increase the intensity of public security. Zhao Yi put down the letter in his hand, made a decision thoughtfully, and shouted loudly to the outside, "Come here, order the city guards and the city's police to strengthen public security." This official wants the whole city to open doors at night and not pick up lost items on the road. Gihua City, which was already on high alert, was even more busy with Zhao Yi's order. If Gihua City was not too big, they would have been ready to search door to door. However, even so, the actions of the Gihua City government made the residents living there even more uneasy. They didn't know what was wrong with these Zaya people. First, there were fireworks celebrations a few days ago, followed by a long period of severe crackdowns. Now it's more like a large army attacking the city outside, which made them think too much. Early the next morning, Zhao Yi had people clean up the streets and clear the crowd. And he took the main officials of the city and quietly waited for Yang Song's arrival outside the open city gate. Yang Song also set out from Shanhaiguan early in the morning, bringing his family and a small team of Jinaiwei, disguised as a Zaya merchant caravan that went out of the pass to do business. Shanhaiguan is only 10 kilometers away from Gihua City. When they were halfway there, the Jinaiwei who went out to investigate returned and reported to him, "Your Majesty, Governor Zhao has made preparations to welcome you outside the city." Yang Song walked out of the carriage, hummed, frowned, and ordered Wang Wei beside him, "Give the order. Remember to call me boss. Also, send someone to tell Zhao Yi to withdraw. I'm here for a private visit, so high profile. Are you afraid that no one will know?" "Yes, big boss, I will go right away." Wang Wei clasped his fists to Yang Song and asked another Jinaiwei to ride a warhorse with a token to report the news. After giving instructions, Yang Song turned to his family in the carriage and smiled gently. "We've been walking for so long. Let's go to the tree next to the road and rest for a while." "Well, everything is up to my husband." Zaya Elan's voice came from the carriage, and then she took Zaya Ojuan, Yang Zion, and Yang Yan out of the carriage and walked to Yang Song's side. The two maids took out a blanket and a small table and stool from the back of the carriage and went to a big tree on the roadside to clean up. Soon, two maids came to report, "My lord and madam, everything has been packed. Please take a seat and rest." "Okay." Yang Song nodded to the maid and said to his family, "Let's go, sit over there for a while." When he said this, he saw the two children who were eager to try, and he said to the two children with a smile, "You two can go play around for a while. Remember not to run too far, and don't get your clothes dirty." The two children had been waiting for Yang Song to say this, and then waited eagerly for Zaya Elan and Zaya Ojuan to nod in agreement, and then they shouted excitedly, and Yang Zion ran to the front of the road first. Brother, wait for me, I want to go too." Yang Yan saw Yang Zion running away, and chased after him with her little legs. Yang Zion ran 2 steps at first because of excitement. After hearing Yang Yan's voice behind him, he stopped and turned around to wait for Yang Yan to run to him. Yang Zion took his sister's hand, pulled up a small grass on the roadside, and handed it to Yang Yan's little hand, and then ran to the front to play together. Yang Song saw this scene, nodded with satisfaction, and said to Zaya Elan and Zaya Ojuan beside him, "Ziona is sensible, and knows how to take care of her sister." Zaya Ojuan heard Yang Song's praise and followed suit. "Husband, Ziona has known how to take care of Jaina for a long time. She always gives her sister fun and delicious things. This is all because of your good parenting. Sister praised me. I just taught Ziona some small principles. The big principles are taught by teachers." Zaya Elan and Zaya Ojuan took the opportunity to chat about some ordinary things of the two children, including the playful side and the cute and sensible side. "Really? Ziona is so sensible? This was the first time Yang Song knew that Yang Xian would take care of Yang Yan so much. He was a little surprised, but then he said to the two women with guilt and joy, "It's all my fault. I'm too busy and don't have time to spend more time with you." "Don't say that, husband." Xiaolan smiled and shook her head repeatedly, saying, "We sisters know that you are busy, so we don't want to bother you with these little things." While Yang Song's family was resting leisurely, the Jinaiwei were busy and dispersed to see if there were any dangerous beasts or suspicious people approaching. Even the two maids were busy preparing snacks and tea. Because this passage was only used by the soldiers and civilians of Xia State, during Yang Song's rest time, he could see the people of Xia State and patrolling soldiers passing through the passage from time to time. The people who passed by saw the behavior of Yang Song and his party, and they all rationally did not come forward to disturb them. When the patrolling soldiers met them, Wang Wei stepped forward and took out the pass that Yiking and Luzun had prepared for him in advance. Yang Song didn't have to worry about all these. He just needed to have a good rest with his family. After Yang Song estimated that Gihua City had returned to normal, he stood up and told Wang Wei to get back on the road. The 12 Jinaiwei quickly gathered and set out on the journey to Gihua City again. In less than an hour, the convoy arrived outside Gihua City. Yang Song poked his head out of the carriage and saw the wide open city gate and the crowds coming in and out. Yang Song nodded with satisfaction and waved to Wang Wei to lead the team into the city. The Jinaiwei team was dressed in simple clothes. Because they had to protect the safety of Yang Song's family, they all carried weapons, including waist knives and short-barreled muskets. However, because Gihua City controlled weapons, in order to disguise their identities, each Jinaiwei carried a long wooden box behind him, with all the weapons in it. When Yang Song and his party entered Gihua City, they were intercepted by the city guards for procedural questioning and inspection. Wang Wei stepped forward to negotiate, claiming that they were a caravan dealing in timber, and that the women in the carriage were inconvenient to go out. However, even so, the city guards were still diligently ready to check in the carriage for inspection. How could Wang Wei dare to let these city guards disturb Yang Song's family? He had no choice but to show the relevant documents and let the city guards let them enter the city. After entering Gihua City, Yang Song got out of the carriage and walked on the street with Wang Wei. Seeing that most of the people on the street were natives, he couldn't help but frown. When he got off the carriage, he saw for the first time in the city of Xia that the natives who were only strictly guarded in Xia were walking so freely on the street, which made him instinctively feel disgusted from the bottom of his heart. But Yang Song immediately let it go. After all, this was Gihua City. He had already prepared himself mentally, but he was still not used to it when he really encountered it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331, Incognito Visit. Boss, is there anything wrong? Wang Wei frowned as soon as he saw Yang Song get off the carriage and immediately became alert, and his hand even touched the wooden box behind him. Seeing Wang Wei's look, Yang Song relaxed his brows and waved his hand, saying, "Nothing, let's find a place to stay first." At this time, a Xia countryman came over and stopped about 10 steps away from Yang Song and others, bowing and saluting to Yang Song from a distance. Wang Wei stepped forward and negotiated in a low voice, then turned to report to Yang Song, "Boss, this man is called Wang Yang, and he was sent by Governor Zhao. He said that the governor has arranged a place for you." Yeah. When Yang Song saw the man opposite, he probably guessed that the other party was sent by Zhao Yi. Yang Song came here to hide his identity because he didn't want to make a big fuss. If his identity was exposed, this journey would be much less colorful. Zhao Yi arranged a small courtyard for Yang Song and his party to live in, which was only a few steps away from the government office. The entire courtyard was used by Yang Song and his party, and no one came to disturb them, which made it easier for Yang Song and his party to avoid being noticed by those who wanted to see them. After settling down, Yang Song took his family and 2 Jinaiwei to the street, ready to find a restaurant on the street to have lunch and see if there was anything special about the food here. Wang Yang, who was arranged by Zhao Yi, also followed Yang Song at this time, acting as a tour guide, and asked Yang Song, "Sir, may I ask what arrangements you have now? It's almost noon now, is there any restaurant worth recommending for me and my family to eat?" Yang Song gave an answer immediately. He was unfamiliar with Gihua City, so he had to let the other party lead the way first. "Yes, sir." Wang Yang bowed and said, "Speaking of food in this city, the most famous ones are Crane Feather Restaurant and Kingpin Restaurant." Without waiting for Yang Song to continue asking questions, Wang Yang continued to introduce. Crane Feather Restaurant is best at running birds and beasts, while Kingpin Restaurant is famous for its popularity. After that, he stood aside with his hands folded and waited for instructions. Yang Song did not answer directly, but turned to his family and asked softly, "What do you want to eat?" Father, I want to eat ducklings, roast chicken, osmanthus cakes, and glutinous rice cakes." When she heard that they were going to eat delicious food, Yang Yan raised her little hand first, jumping up and down, so that Yang Song would notice her. Seeing that they were outsiders again, Yang Zion became polite and well-mannered. Seeing his sister being so rude, he quietly pulled Yang Yan and whispered, "Sister, mother hasn't said anything yet." Although Yang Zion's voice was low, everyone present had already focused their attention on them, so how could they not hear it? Yang Song was still very satisfied to see Yang Zion, who now had some temperament. Who doesn't want their children to be so sensible? Xiaolan saw the conversation between the 2 children and touched the top of their heads intimately. She didn't care about Yang Zion's evasive attitude because of the presence of outsiders and said gently, "Just follow Jaina." After getting the answer, Yang Song turned to Wang Yang and said, "Did you hear it?" "Yes, sir, I know." Wang Yang bowed again, turned to Yang Song and gestured, "Sir, madam, young master, miss, please come this way." Wang Yang is very good at being a person and doing things. When addressing several people, even the young 2 children, he is respectful. He just saw Yang Song's love for the 2 children. Wang Yang had prepared a carriage for Yang Song's family, but Yang Song refused after asking if the distance was far. According to him, he wanted to walk around Gihua City and take a look. When they heard that they had to walk over, the 2 children were not unhappy, but jumped up happily. It was rare for a family to go shopping together, especially since they had hidden their identities this time. It was their first experience, which made the 2 children feel extra excited. Looking left and right along the way, Yang Yan, who was jumping around, and Yang Zion, who was also curious, but holding back on the road. The cute appearance of the 2 children and their extraordinary appearance frequently attracted the attention of passers-by. If it weren't for the unfriendly eyes of Wang Wei and others, it is estimated that someone would really come to talk. Under the guidance of Wang Yang, it took only a few minutes to arrive at a 3-story Chinese-style building that occupied a large area and was magnificent. Transparent glass, red-painted columns, wooden stairs, screens, counters, ceiling lanterns and other decorations were all available. "Sir, please go up to the 3rd floor. I have prepared a private room for you." Yang Song did not refuse Wang Yang's arrangement this time. He did not want to attract attention for a meal. Not only the private room on the 3rd floor, but even the entire restaurant had been thoroughly checked by the Jinaiwei who had arrived earlier. Lunch gave Yang Song a special experience. The birds unique to this world in the chickens, ducks, and geese unique to Xia country, although not as exquisite as what he usually used. The unique taste also made Yang Song's family very satisfied. After lunch, Yang Song took his family to visit several main streets in Gihua City for the whole afternoon. The prosperous commerce, the various people, the unique goods of this world, and even some exotic shops made Yang Song's family go in and out frequently, although most of them were pulled in by the 2 children. Even Xiaolan and Xiaojuan were attracted by the unique charm of this city. Although they did not say it directly, Yang Song could still tell from the expressions of the 2 girls that they had a lot of fun this afternoon. When dusk fell, when Yang Song was about to decide to return to his residence, Wang Yang came to report, "Sir, Governor Zhao has prepared a fireworks show tonight. Please come and enjoy it." Although he didn't say it explicitly, Wang Yang was obviously telling Yang Song that Zhao Yi had specially prepared a welcome ceremony for Yang Song's arrival. Fireworks. Fireworks. Are there fireworks today? Yang Yan, who was already a little drowsy, immediately became energetic when she heard this and clamored to watch the fireworks. Even the two girls and Yang Xian were looking forward to it when they heard this. Seeing his family's behavior, Yang Song could only nod and agree. Lead the way. Logically speaking, fireworks are not uncommon in Qianqi City. Every time there is a festival, Qianqi City will inevitably have a fireworks show that costs a lot of money, which makes the officials and citizens of the city enjoy it. But who would think that such a thing is too little? After a few steps, under the guidance of Wang Yang, Yang Song and his family walked into a park not far away. Deep in the park was a 7-story tower, the tallest building in Gihua City, and the best place to watch the fireworks show. When Yang Song arrived at the gate of the park, he saw Zhao Yi and several important officials of Gihua City who had been waiting for a long time. Seeing that the park had been cleared before Yang Song could speak, Zhao Yi and his men hurried forward, bowed and greeted, saying, "Your humble servants greet the king, queen, prince, and princess. No need to be polite, please stand up." Yang Song saw such a style. How could he not know that this was Zhao Yi's careful arrangement just to meet and greet him? Although he was not very satisfied with Zhao Yi's bureaucratic style, he had to understand and be pleased with the other party's good intentions, and this was exactly what Zhao Yi wanted to convey. After getting up, Zhao Yi walked up to Yang Song, bowed again and apologized, saying, "Your Majesty, we did not come to greet you from afar, please forgive us." "Okay, I know your intention." Yang Song waved his hand to interrupt, saying, "Aren't there still fireworks? Lead the way, don't you see that the ladies are waiting anxiously?" "Yes, I know my crime." Zhao Yi bowed again after hearing this, then stood up and led the way, saying, "Your Majesty, Queen, Prince, Princess, please come this way. I have prepared a banquet and refreshments in the high tower ahead." From Zhao Yi's attitude, Yang Song knew that the other party had already known what he meant, otherwise he would not have claimed to be knowing his crime. Yang Song's attitude just now was telling Zhao Yi that he was very dissatisfied with the other party's style, but he still received and accepted the other party's kindness, but this time, it will not happen again. Chapter 332, Xia Country People. Swoosh bang. Yang Song was sitting on the top floor of the tower. Without chatting with Zhao Yi and the others, he saw a shining dot with a small tail flying up from the city to the sky and suddenly exploded, blooming into a big ball of sparks. Then, row after row, one after another, fireworks of different colors and in an orderly manner bloomed in the sky one after another, revealing a corner of the entire Gihua city from the darkness, as if the sleeping city was hazily awakened by the fireworks. Wow, fireworks. Yang Yan saw the fireworks show start and ran from Xiaojuan to the corridor of the tower. Her little hands tightly grasped the wooden railings, and she raised her little head to look at the fireworks in the sky. When Yang Xian saw that her sister had run out, her little hands impatiently pulled the corner of Xiaolan's clothes under the table, but her eyes were fixed on the fireworks outside the door. Xiaolan gestured to Yang Xian, and seeing his absent-minded look, Yang Song smiled slightly and nodded to Xiaolan. Xiaolan then patted Yang Xian on the back and said, "Go." "Thank you, father and mother." Yang Xian did not run out like his sister did, but bowed to Yang Song and the others first, then walked out of the room quickly with his small feet, stood with Yang Yan, and looked up at the fireworks in the sky. Zhao Yi saw all of this. When Yang Xian walked out of the room, he bowed and praised, "The eldest prince is really a dragon among men, well educated, intelligent, and humble ministers wish the king well." Hearing this, Yang Song turned his eyes away from Yang Xian and laughed. "Yang Xian is still young, and we can't see anything yet. We will know what kind of person he is in the future." He said so, but he was still very happy. Even Xiaolan beside him looked at Zhao Yi with a much friendlier look. In fact, Xiaolan didn't have much good feelings for the culprit who disturbed him and Yang Song's family. While Yang Song's family was enjoying the fireworks on the high tower, in a cloth shop opened by a Xia merchant in Gihua City, a teenager stood in the backyard and looked at the fireworks in a trance. I don't know what he was thinking about, and there was some crystal in the corner of his eyes. Mr. Wang, the shopkeeper is calling you. What are you doing standing in the front yard? A young man ran out from the backyard and shouted at the teenager who was staring at the sky. Wang heard the familiar voice behind him, came back to his senses, lowered his head, and wiped his eyes with his sleeve, turned around and said, "Okay, got it, I'll go now." The young man was about the same age as Wang. Seeing that something was wrong with Wang, he was very surprised and asked, "What's wrong with you? Are you crying?" No. Wang shook his head and denied, "I just looked up at the fireworks and some dust fell into my eyes." "Okay, the shopkeeper is calling you. You'd better go over quickly." The young man didn't care, just urged Wang. Wang walked into the shopkeeper's residence in the backyard and saw a table already placed under the eaves. The shopkeeper was already sitting on one side and waved to Wang who came in. "Shopkeeper." Wang bowed and saluted. "I wonder what the shopkeeper wants to see me about." "Zion, come on, come and sit down." The shopkeeper was a middle-aged man with a goatee popular in Zaya country. He gestured to Wang to sit opposite him. After Wang walked to the opposite side and sat down somewhat awkwardly, the shopkeeper glanced at Wang, then looked at the fireworks that continued to bloom in the sky and said, "Zion, you have followed me to this city outside the pass for almost half a year, right?" "Yes, shopkeeper, it has been half a year." Wang didn't know what the shopkeeper meant by saying this, so he had to thank him out loud. "Thank you for taking care of me all these years." Wang is now 19 years old. His father is Wang Da from the military factory. After so many years, he was originally just a babbling child, but now he has become a teenager who can stand on his own. Originally, Wang Da planned to spend some money to send Wang into a higher education or intermediate professional school after Wang graduated from middle school, so that he could take the exam to become a high-ranking official in the future. Even if he failed to pass the imperial examination, he could still find some connections in the future to get Wang into the military factory. With Wang's academic qualifications at that time, the chance of entering the military factory was still very high. But who would have thought that Wang didn't appreciate it at all, and found a job as an apprentice accountant in a cloth shop in Cheyenne City without Wang Da's knowledge. After all, even with the national conditions of Xiaguo where everyone can read and write and 3 years of compulsory education, it is very easy for Wang, who has received 9 years of education, to find a job. However, after Yang Song became king and the Cheyenne Railway was opened, the education system of Xiaguo changed from 3 years of compulsory education to 6 years of compulsory education. Because Xiaguo officially entered the industrial age, the demand for people's culture was gradually increasing, so Yang Song made this decision, after discussing with LIUG, ZHUZ and others. After 3 years of elementary school, 3 years of primary school, and 3 years of middle school, Wang, according to his father Wang Dan, is a scholar. His old Wang family can raise a cultural person in his generation, and Wang Da can be regarded as a glory to his ancestors. So it was a foregone conclusion, and Wang Da no longer blamed Wang, but sometimes he couldn't help but sigh with regret. It would be better if he could be an official. Wang was an apprentice in the account office in the 10th year of Cheyenne. Since then, Wang has been following the shopkeeper in front of him, who is also his boss. It was not until the 14th year of Cheyenne, more than a year after the opening of the Cheyenne Railway, that the shopkeeper decided to take him out of the customs and build a career in this city outside the customs, Gihua City. The shopkeeper's name is Chen Liang. He is one of the earliest people in Cheyenne City. With his efforts and the rapid development of Zaya country, he opened a store in Cheyenne City. Later, when the steam power era came, he saw that the cloth business was booming, so he changed this grocery store into a cloth sales store. This was also the time when Wang entered his store. Although he made a lot of money at the beginning, his business soon became difficult because of the saturation of the domestic market in Zaya country, and then he heard the news of Gihua City. However, the business at that time could still be maintained by old customers. More importantly, there was no railway at that time, and the long distance of more than 700 kilometers made him stop. With the opening of the Xianshan Railway, the distance between the two places is no longer far away. Finally, after repeated thinking and hesitation, Chen Liang spent a year. Until half a year ago, Chen Liang saw that the business of the store had not improved at all, so he made up his mind to sell the store in Qianqi City and brought Wang An, who was willing to go out with him, to Gihua City and bought a bigger family business at a preferential price. After arriving in Gihua City, Chen Liang relied on his connections in China to purchase goods at a more favorable price, transported them to Shanhaiguan by train, and then hired a professional transport team to transport them to Gihua City and sold them to the natives outside the pass at nearly double the price, which made him a lot of profit. And Wang An also changed from an accountant apprentice to an accountant, and his status improved a lot. Now he is the second person in the store, which can be regarded as a success. The young man named Wang An was recruited by Chen Liang and his team in Gihua City. According to the young man, he had just changed from a refugee to a citizen of Xia State not long ago, and he was a little uncomfortable with the life in Xia State, so he ran to this city to live. Chen Liang was impressed by the young man's boldness and carefulness, so he decided to hire him as the head of the team. He hired more than just one young man. The young man had several people under him, but most of them were natives who knew the language of Xia country and did not live with Chen Liang and his men. Not only Chen Liang, Wang An, and the young man, but in fact, as long as they were Xia country citizens, as long as they worked hard and were diligent enough, they could live comfortably. If they had some brains and courage, it would not be a problem for them to start a business. Chapter 333 Man and Nature. In the 14th year of Qianqi, Xia State was developing in full swing, and the pattern outside the Great Wall had also changed. Not long after Yang Song went north and returned to Qianqi City, Chen Ping brought him an important piece of information. Baxter State was about to be destroyed. Since Baxter State suffered a fatal blow from Xia State in the 12th year of Qianqi, it has never recovered. Aubrey was even more disheartened and indulged in luxury all day long. He even sent people to spend a lot of money to buy a lot of Xia State wine from Gihua City and indulged in it. Aubrey was completely hit by Xia State. Anyway, no matter how hard he tried to expand his power, he couldn't beat Xia State. Maybe Xia State would send troops again when he was unhappy. What should he do? Aubrey figured it out. Xia State was obviously watching the fun. Their so-called country and monarch were no better than clowns in the eyes of Xia State. It is estimated that when Xia State has seen enough, their forces and people will have only one way to go. If it is so, why should he care? It would be better to enjoy it, while Xia Kingdom has not seen enough excitement. Even the Knight Commander who returned from the defeat, Ian Lid, he did not care. When all his subordinates could not persuade him, Aubrey just let it go and spent 2 years in a mudville, and his power was maintained spontaneously by the various dignitaries. However, Aubrey's good luck soon passed, and the time to enjoy was almost gone. After Xia Kingdom withdrew its troops, Parker of the Freemite Kingdom knew that Baxter Kingdom was already very weak and would definitely be conquered as long as he sent troops. But the previous example of Baxter Kingdom was there. Xia Kingdom used troops against Baxter Kingdom and claimed to the outside world that it was a punishment for Baxter Kingdom's wanton expansion of power and launching wars. When Parker heard this claim, he did not believe it at all. He thought that this must be the reason for Xia Kingdom to launch a war of annexation and capture slaves by the way. However, after Xia Kingdom won the war, it withdrew its troops quickly and did not occupy a city, let alone a city, not to mention a village, which made Parker and others stunned. They didn't expect that Xia State was really going to such great lengths just to punish Baxter State. As for those slaves, Parker and his men didn't take them seriously at all, because they had done such things before. So even if Xia State withdrew its troops for a year, Baxter State would be weak for a year. During this period, although Parker wanted to send troops, he still rationally held back. However, after a year, Parker saw that Baxter State had not recovered yet, and he couldn't help it. He summoned his men and asked them to come up with a solution that would not offend Xia State and send troops to attack. Parker's question made his dignitaries dumbfounded. Isn't this embarrassing? Is this a question that people should ask? Is this a solution that people can come up with? If they could come up with a solution, why would they have to wait until now? It is estimated that after Zaya State withdraws its troops, they will capture Baxter State. But who made Parker unable to help? In the end, the dignitaries were forced to no choice, and Babu came up with a solution that was not a solution. Under pressure, Babu suggested, "Your Majesty, why don't we send troops to attack the small lords between our Fremite and Baxter countries first?" Before Babu finished speaking, Parker interrupted, "That won't work. Zaya will definitely send troops. Your Majesty, please listen to me." Babu was helpless. He was the one who forced and vetoed, which made it difficult for Babu to do. But Parker had already made a harsh statement. For the sake of his own life, he could only continue to explain patiently, based on the relationship between our Fremite and Zaya for many years. If Zaya would send troops, it would definitely warn us first. At that time, we will withdraw our troops immediately and send some slaves to Zaya. Isn't this a waste of effort? Parker was still thinking about Babu's words when he heard the people below refute Babu with this, so he stared at Babu, waiting for his explanation. How come it's a waste of effort? Babu looked at the man who refuted him, as if he were a fool, and sighed in his heart. How could the gap between people, countries, and wisdom be so big? Before the other party continued, Babu explained to Parker, if the Zaya kingdom did not send troops, or just warned, then wouldn't our Philimite kingdom make a lot of money? As Babu said this, not only Parker, but everyone present started to make a noise. They have always been scared by the reputation of the Zaya kingdom, and they didn't expect that there was a way to test this. They looked at Babu with amazement and admiration, and even Parker was no exception. Such noise made Babu very useful. He felt that his own wisdom should be at the same level as the Zaya people, and these people who only care about the immediate interests are creatures of two levels in his eyes. He finally realized how the Zaya people view them. Babu thought to himself, no wonder these Zaya people don't want outsiders to enter their country. If it were me, I wouldn't want to either. Yes, how could humans let monkeys live with them? Then Babu thought of the trade city built by Zaya. Why did Zaya build this city? So that people could live with monkeys. When others were making noises, Babu had ignored Parker's decision to agree with his suggestion and ignored others' compliments. He was thinking about this problem now, but he couldn't figure it out. Coming back to his senses, Babu laughed at himself. He thought that his wisdom was comparable to that of the Zaya people, but he didn't expect that he was still a little behind. So he smiled modestly at the people around him who praised him and said, "No, I'm still far away." This made the people around him look up to him, and even Parker, who was sitting on the throne, nodded with satisfaction. Sure enough, the Fremite kingdom captured several small territories in the east with a thunderous force, so fast that the joint forces composed of 4 territories could not react. Over the years, although the pace of the Fremite kingdom's offensive expansion has been hindered, it has not been without any gains. Parker took advantage of the past few years to digest it well, and let all the forces in the country obey him. There were no disobedient ones. After years of preparation, the country of Philimite was already strong and powerful. The opponents that seemed strong in the past seemed completely vulnerable at this moment. This made Parker feel satisfied, and thought that even the Zaya kingdom was no better than this. He did not take the Zaya kingdom seriously, and was ready to make a move. He looked around the country of Philimite, but Babu's view was completely opposite to Parker's. After years of recuperation, the country of Philimite was so strong. How strong should the Zaya kingdom, which had been recuperating all the time, be? It was precisely because of Babu's persuasion, who was famous for his wisdom, that Parker was able to hold back the idea of sending troops and wait for the response of the Zaya kingdom. Parker expected that the Zaya kingdom would not take any action and would be a paper tiger. He expected that the Zaya kingdom would not dare to take the strong country of Philimite as an enemy because of the heavy losses it suffered in the last war. Chapter 334, The End of the Road. The next reaction of Zaya Guo made Parker happy first, and then disappointed him. He was happy that Zaya Guo did not say anything about it, as if he had not seen it. He was disappointed that, just when he was happy, Zaya Guo sent someone to deliver a letter, telling him to stop. This made Parker's expectations all go to waste. What do you think of this letter from Zaya Guo? Parker called all his subordinates to discuss. Although he asked the questions to the dignitaries present, He stared at Babu, obviously waiting for Babu to give him advice. The dignitaries present also did not speak like Parker, but looked directly at Babu, waiting for his answer. Seeing this situation, Babu was complacent, but also a little sarcastic. He stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, Zaire is warning us. Next, we just need to launch another attack. If Zaire starts to mobilize troops, then we will stop the attack. If Zaire is just warning, then we can continue to attack and ignore Zaire." Although Parker knew that what Babu said was the cautious approach, he was very unhappy to hear that he still had to endure, so he asked expectantly, "Can we attack directly and ignore Zaire? At most, I will dispatch a large army to guard against Zaire." "Your Majesty, you can't." Babu saw the impatient Parker and immediately stopped him. "Our country of Philomet is still friendly with Zaire. If we send troops, it will be a complete break. If Zaire also sends troops while we attack, we will be caught in a pincer attack." Babu was sincere in his words. He really didn't want to have a conflict with Zaire. He had been to Gihua City several times and knew that Zaire's actual strength was far more than what he showed. Parker didn't know this. He was very upset now. He was struggling in his heart. Facing the reputation of Zaire, he still felt sympathetic. In the end, he decided to endure it again. Parker swore that this was the last time. So Parker ordered an attack on a small town in Baxter, looking forward to Zaire's response. At this time, Zaire was overhauling the railway branch and the army was training. How could they care about the expansion of Philomet? If it wasn't for controlling the power of Baxter, Zaire would not have sent the letter. Of course, Zaire was not completely indifferent to the dynamics outside the pass, but it was in a special period. It was strong but not strong, which gave Baxter an opportunity. When the second test began, Zaire sent Chang Sheng to Nanshan City to meet Parker in person for lobbying, but Parker had already made a decision. No matter what Chang Sheng said, it was useless. If Baxter had not been severely damaged by Zaire, Zaire could have stopped Parker's expansion by supporting Baxter. Although Yang Song and others knew that they were creating a good opportunity for the expansion of Philomet when they sent troops to Baxter, at that time Zaire was all considering its own development, so it could not take care of the outside of the pass. Besides, even if Parker expanded and became stronger, Zaire would not have any worries. It's just that it's more difficult to control, or maybe this is exactly what the ministers of Zaire want, otherwise it would be too boring. When Parker and Babu knew that Zaire sent people to envoy, they knew that the overall situation was settled. Parker was so happy that he immediately ordered troops to Baxter as soon as Chang Sheng left. Although Baxter has declined, a lean camel is bigger than a horse, and there are still many powerful people who are still maintaining it, so it is not something that Philomet, which is of the same physique, can swallow in a short time. Therefore, Parker had no scruples and fought an offensive and defensive war with Baxter for more than a year. Until recently, the Freemite Kingdom had already attacked the capital of Baxter. At this time, all the forces of Baxter have been gathered in Baxter City. The surrounding towns and villages within a radius of dozens of kilometers have not yet recovered from the destruction of Zaire Kingdom, so they passively became a state of fortification. Besides, no matter how confused Aubrey was, he knew that he was at the last critical moment and there was no way out. Either the defense was successful, then Baxter still had some time, or it failed, and Baxter would naturally cease to exist. Aubrey still woke up at this last moment, and called Nightien to let him defend with all his strength without worrying about anything else. This surprised Ian a little. He didn't expect that his monarch could still wake up. He thought that until his death, the other party would only die in a drunken dream. But even so, there was nothing to worry about in Baxter. Anyway, Ian didn't have much feeling for Aubrey. He was now trying hard to defend the city just to save his life. Now the total force of Baxter City is only more than 50,000 people, and the attacking Freemite army is so numerous outside the city that it is impossible to see the end, and it has surrounded Baxter City tightly. It was at this time that Yang Song got the information from Chenping that Baxter country was about to be destroyed. Outside Baxter City, the Freemite army was about to launch a general attack. Under Pollen's attack order, the Freemite army started to attack the city from all sides at the same time, leaving Baxter country no way to retreat. However, in just 2 days, the walls of Baxter City had been captured. Now the armies of the two countries are engaged in street fighting. Judging from the situation, it is only a matter of time before it is completely captured. Ian rushed into the castle in the middle of the city with a bloody face and reported anxiously to Aubrey, who was sitting on the throne and drinking one glass after another. "My lord, Baxter City can no longer be defended." Aubrey didn't say anything, drank a small glass of wine in one gulp, looked at Ian with hazy eyes, and said, "Is it Ian? Come, have a drink with this lord. This Zyre country wine is really strong." "Lord, why are you still drinking? The enemy is about to attack the castle." Ian saw that Aubrey didn't feel anything at all, as if Aubrey who woke up 2 days ago was just an illusion. Aubrey didn't have a sense of crisis, but he was powerless to turn the tide. He knew this day would come 2 years ago, but it was not Zyre country that came to destroy him, but Philomet country. But what difference does it make? Anyway, in the end it's just death, and it doesn't matter who you die in. After thinking this through, Aubrey fell into a drunken dream again, and maybe he wouldn't feel pain when he died. Report. Just as Ian was about to say a few more words, a soldier ran into the hall and reported, "The enemy is already attacking the castle." In fact, Ian could hear the shouts and screams outside the castle without the soldier's report. After hearing the soldier's report, he thought about it, ignored Aubrey who was sitting above, picked up the battle axe, and turned to walk out of the hall. Ian also figured it out. Anyway, they were all going to die. He was a knight, and even a knight commander. If he had to die, he decided to die on the battlefield, which was also his loyalty. Seeing Ian who was gone, Aubrey picked up the wine pot and poured a glass of wine, saluted the door of the hall from a distance, and drank it in one gulp, after heating it up. After taking this sip, Aubrey was finally drunk. The wine pot and wine glass in his hands slipped from his hands, and his body fell asleep on the throne, never waking up again. Chapter 335, Enmity between the two parties. After reading the intelligence, Yang Song asked Chenping, "Chenping, can Baxter hold on?" Chenping bowed and replied, "Your Majesty, it is estimated that the army of Philomet should have already attacked the city. Even with external help, Baxter will not be spared." "Forget it then." Yang Song threw the intelligence in his hand on the table and leaned back on the back of the chair. He asked this question just by luck, but since it was a foregone conclusion, he could do nothing about it. However, Yang Song did not want Philomet to expand its power so comfortably, so he ordered, "Let the administrative office issue an ultimatum and tell Philomet to withdraw its troops immediately, otherwise Philomet will be regarded as declaring war on Zyre. In addition, tell Zunyu to let Gahua City impose an economic blockade on Philomet." Yang Song thought for a while, and then ordered, "Let Li Jing pay attention to the military movements outside Shanhaiguan." "Yes, Your Majesty." Chenping took the order and passed it down. It was March of the 14th year of Cheyenne Qi. The army of Zyre State had been reorganized and was undergoing training with new weapons. Only part of the last city guard was still changing its clothes. If the whole army had completed training, it would be a very good opportunity to train soldiers, but the army was not fully prepared. In fact, not all the troops had not completed training. After all, Zyre State still needed a certain amount of military force to guard, but only the Imperial Guard had completed training for a cavalry brigade. The defense of these 20,000 troops was okay, but the offense was obviously insufficient. According to Chenping's report to Yang Song from the intelligence department, the country of Philomet had an army of 300,000. And if the purpose was to train soldiers, then all the troops of Zyre State must be involved. But Yang Song didn't want to just watch Philomet become stronger, which was not in the interests of Zyre State. So Yang Song ordered to use other methods to contain Philomet. Even if he couldn't achieve his goal, he wanted Philomet to know that Zyre State was not completely indifferent. 2 days later, Chenping reported to Yang Song again, "Your Majesty, Baxter has been destroyed, and Philomet is in the process of finishing up. In addition, according to the news sent back by the people of Philomet, the other party is sending more troops to a small town near Gahua City." Chenping's face was very serious when he reported. When Yang Song heard this, he felt that the matter was somewhat unexpected, and asked in surprise, "How dare they send troops? What are they going to do?" Attack or defense? The attack he asked about was whether Philemon wanted to attack Zaire, and the defense was whether Philemon defended against Zaire's attack. When he asked this, Yang Song thought of the whole story and had another feeling. Philemon wanted to attack Baxter, but it was Zaire that was on guard and worried, while Baxter was not taken seriously at all. This is really the sadness of the week, and life and death are completely controlled by others. Chen Ping replied, Your Majesty, according to intelligence, the kingdom of Philemon is preparing for defense to prevent our Zaire kingdom from attacking them for being disobedient. According to intelligence from the dignitaries, the monarch of the kingdom of Philemon seems to have plans to digest the newly occupied land. Digest? Haha, this is really a progress. Yang Song sneered. It's only been a few years. These natives actually know that they need to digest. They really can't be underestimated. Your Majesty is right. Chen Ping is in charge of intelligence. He has witnessed the huge changes in the natives outside the pass in recent years. It is completely that the entire civilization level outside the pass has been improved to a certain extent under the influence of the Zaire kingdom. In this case, let's wait and see. We'll talk about it later. After Yang Song said this, he waved his hand to let Chen Ping go. Yang Song planned that when the army of the Zaire kingdom was ready, he would teach this disobedient little brother a lesson and let him know that your big brother will always be your big brother. Not only Yang Song had this idea, but also other people in the Zaire kingdom had this idea. Not long after Chen Ping left, Li Jing and Liug, who had received the news, came to meet Yang Song one after another. After the greeting, Liug reported to Yang Song, Your Majesty, if the countries outside the Great Wall are doing this, and are not stopped, it will be a big hidden danger in the future. Yes, Your Majesty, what the military advisor said is right. Li Jing clasped his fists and saluted Yang Song, and then said, As far as I know, the act of sending troops by the kingdom of Philemon is completely contemptuous of our country. It should be punished to warn other countries. I know what you said. Yang Song nodded lightly and said, But you also know the situation of our country's army. It is in a transition period and we must not act rashly. Your Majesty is wise. Liug first praised, and then suggested, As far as I know, the country of Philemon has such a strong army, and it is inseparable from the support of our country. Therefore, I suggest cutting off its support first, and then sending troops to attack when our army is ready. I don't know anything else, but I suggest that we strictly defend Shanhaiguan and Gihua City to prevent the enemy from being desperate and launching an attack on our country first. Li Jing had already regarded the country of Philemon as an enemy of the Zaire state. In fact, after Yang Song's ultimatum was issued, the seemingly friendly relationship with Philemon had already deteriorated. Now, Philemon has only changed from an unfriendly country to a hostile country. Yeah. Yang Song thought so too. He thought of another question and said, If our country sends troops to attack, what is the purpose? Is it necessary to occupy the land outside the pass? This. Liug and Li Jing looked at each other after hearing this, not knowing how to answer. If they were to say that Zaire would defeat Philemon, they thought it was certain, but if they were given a specific goal and asked them to give a degree, they really couldn't say it at this time. Punishment is certain, and stopping Philemon from continuing to grow is also certain, but how to do it specifically is uncertain. After all, once the war starts, it is unknown when it can stop, so there needs to be a plan for the generals to know how to control this degree. Seeing that this problem would not be solved in a short time, Yang Song said, How about this, pharmacist, you intensify the training of the army and make preparations for war, and Bo Wen, you go back and think about the problem I just mentioned. As for Gihua City, Yang Song pondered for a moment and ordered, Only impose restrictions on the caravans from the kingdom of Philemon and ignore the rest of the caravans for the time being. Necessary vigilance is still indispensable. Yes, my king, I obey your orders. Liug and Li Jing were relieved to hear Yang Song's orders and immediately bowed to accept the orders. Chapter 336 Split Plan. 3 months later, it was time for Yang Song to go north. At this time, the army of Zaire State was ready. Yang Song decided to go north at this time because Zaire State's upcoming action would make him very busy. If he didn't go north this time, he didn't know when he would have this opportunity in the future. During this period, Parker was very dissatisfied with Gihua City's restrictions on Philomet state, but he was not without a way. Anyway, he could let the caravan go under the banner of other forces. On the other hand, it was precisely because Xia State had these insignificant punishments that made him think that Xia State also had this ability, which made him feel at ease. In fact, he didn't know that this was exactly the message that Xia State conveyed to him. Parker thought that Xia State was afraid of his strength and had no way to deal with him. This made Parker confirm his idea that Xia State was just like this. If Xia State had not had the dangerous place of Sanhedrin, he would have wanted to fight with Xia State. Since Xia State's Sanhedrin is very dangerous, what about Gihua City outside Sanhedrin? Parker looked at a blue and white porcelain vase beside him, eager to try. But he sighed with regret immediately afterwards. If he had not occupied Baxter not long ago, and the naval battle was being consolidated, he would have really taken action. Parker thought of the newly occupied land, and couldn't help but sigh. Hey, Baxter is poor. It seems that it was plundered by Xia last time. How could Baxter not be poor? First, a large number of young and strong people were plundered by Xia, and then under Aubrey's wine and meat, it was no longer as simple as the people's misery. Yang Song and his family returned to Cheyenne Key City and set about punishing Philomet. Now Philomet has only occupied Baxter not long ago, and it is time to involve a lot of energy from the other party. If Philomet really waits for Philomet to digest the newly occupied land, it will not be as easy as it is now for Xia to send troops. Although Xia will be stronger by then. Not many days after Yang Song returned to Cheyenne Key City, Liug came to meet Yang Song. Yang Song asked Liug expectantly, "But when, have you thought of a goal?" Li Jing clasped his fists and replied respectfully, "Your Majesty, yes, I have thought of a goal." Oh. When Yang Song heard this, he immediately asked in detail, "Tell me in detail." Yes. Liug said he took the order and answered in detail. After repeated consideration, and considering the interests of all parties in our country, I suggest that the ultimate goal is to split the kingdom of Philomet. Split? Yang Song said thoughtfully, "This is a good method, but how to do it specifically? Since the kingdom of Philomet has occupied the kingdom of Baxter, let it occupy it." Liug came to meet Yang Song today and was well prepared. He explained, "The land of the former kingdom of Baxter is now 9 out of 10 empty houses. Even though there is a vast land, no one cultivates it. I know it is just a burden." Yang Song asked puzzledly, "This is just now, right? In a few years or more than 10 years, the kingdom of Philomet will not be what it is today. Your Majesty is wise." Seeing that Yang Song had misunderstood his meaning, Liug explained, "Therefore, I suggest splitting the existing land of Philomet into one or more small countries, and taking them under our control, called affiliated countries." Affiliated countries? When Yang Song heard this word, he thought of the fact that Xia Kingdom really had an affiliated country in the distant northern region, but the two places were too far apart, and it was only a name, and Xia Kingdom could not control it at all. Liug's eyes were full of spirit, and he replied, "Your Majesty is called a king, but you only have an affiliated country in name only. This cannot set off your wisdom and bravery, and it cannot show the majesty of our country as a superior country." Hearing Liug's words, although Yang Song was very tempted, after all, with his current status, he only wanted a name, but he still had basic rationality and asked, "How to do it? Since Philomet has ignored our country's ultimatum, is an enemy of our country, and wants to become stronger and get rid of our country's control, how can we just follow their wishes so easily?" When Liug said this, his eyes were already cold. Li Jing continued to explain, "And our country's Gihua City has always been heavily dependent on Philomet. If Philomet blocks the border one day, then Gihua City will be useless." Yang Song knew about this, and had worried about Philomet's blockade before. Because Xia is only adjacent to Philomet, the trade between Gihua City and other forces must all pass through Philomet, which is a serious drawback. If Philomet suddenly blocks the trade route, then Gihua City is just a decoration. This is also the reason why Philomet can become so strong now. After all, just collecting tolls from various forces can make a fortune. As for why Yang Song did not take measures before, it was because Xia believed that Philemon would not dare to go against Zaire, and even if it dared to resist, it would not be Zaire's opponent. But who would have thought that the kingdom of Philemon would be so arrogant and not take the kingdom of Zaire seriously just because it occupied a large piece of land? Thinking of the current situation, Yang Song touched the stubble on his chin and asked, "Bowen, am I easy to bully, or is the kingdom of Zaire too low-key? Your Majesty, please calm down." Upon hearing this, Lurk knew that Yang Song was very angry and replied, "This is just a small country in the north that does not know its place. Why should your Majesty be angry with this barbarian?" After hearing Lurk's persuasion, Yang Song took 2 deep breaths, calmed down, and ordered, "Bowen, just continue talking." Yang Song always thought that he was a very rational person, but he didn't expect that he would get angry because of this. Yang Song calmed down and reflected on his previous loss of composure. He knew that he was not angry because the Philemon kingdom did not listen to his control. He was angry that the other party actually looked down on the Zaire kingdom he created. The Zaire kingdom is rich and powerful, and the other party is just a barbarian native of this world. What qualifications do they have to look down on him? Why do they look down on the Zaire kingdom? This is the reason for his anger. It seems that he and the Zaire kingdom are still too low-key. This is Yang Song's voice at the moment. "Yes, my king." Seeing that Yang Song calmed down immediately, Lurk admired him very much and said, "Since the Philemon kingdom has occupied the Baxter kingdom, let the Baxter kingdom stay there forever. As far as I know, the Baxter kingdom implements the aristocratic feudal system." Yang Song continued to explain, although the monarch of the Baxter kingdom suppressed it and prevented it from resisting, there must be many powerful people who want to resist, but do not have enough power, especially those former lords who were forced to surrender. Therefore, as long as our country promises to maintain its independence and split up as a vassal state, the Baxter country will no longer be a concern. Lurk finished his entire plan. Chapter 337, Unexpected Attack. After listening to Lurk's words, Yang Song finally understood what Lurk meant. Lurk meant that, since Philemon now occupied nearly twice as much land, in order to prevent it from becoming stronger, the previous land of Philemon should be split off, to weaken its land and power. By the way, it can also add many dependent countries to Zaire state, because only Zaire state has the ability and power to split it, so these split forces can only rely on Zaire state, otherwise they can only be annexed again in the end. In addition, it can solve the trade problem of Gihua City, so that Philemon will no longer have the opportunity to block the trade route, so that many forces can serve Zaire state together and contribute their strength to the development and growth of Zaire state. This is the purpose that Lurk's suggestion of sending troops to punish is expected to achieve. Good. Yang Song nodded with satisfaction and praised, "Bowen's plan is still as unfathomable as ever. Your Majesty, you are too kind." Lurk replied with a cupped hand, "This is all under the heroic leadership of the king. I have this good plan. If it weren't for the fact that my country has so many advantages, no matter how many strategies I have, it would be like a clever cook without rice." Lurk was right. If it weren't for the fact that Zaire had such a strong national strength, even if he had the wisdom of a demon, he would have no way out, and he wouldn't be like now, worrying about the choice of happiness for a purpose, because there are too many choices. Destroy the country, occupy, strike, eliminate part of the living force, split. So many choices are placed in front of Lurk and others waiting for confirmation. How can they not worry? In the end, it's just for the greatest interests of Zaire. In this case, Bowen, you go back and make a plan and put it forward at the next court meeting. Yang Song agreed, but still let Lurk follow the procedure and bring it up at the court meeting for the ministers to discuss. When the whole court agreed to Lurk's plan, it was already the end of the 14th year of Cheyenne Qi. The plan was to launch a punitive war in the spring of the 15th year of Cheyenne Qi. However, plans are not as good as changes. On the 5th day after the Chinese New Year in the 15th year of Cheyenne Qi, Yang Song was still enjoying the atmosphere of the Chinese New Year with his family. Chen Ping hurriedly found Yang Song and reported, "Your Majesty, the kingdom of Philemon is expected to attack our country's Gihua city." What? Yang Song was a little bit unbelievable when he heard this and asked, "The kingdom of Philemon dared to attack? What's going on? Yang Song recovered and felt very confused. Didn't they say some time ago that the kingdom of Philomet was strictly guarding against the attack of the Xia kingdom? Why did the other party launch the attack first now? Chen Ping explained in detail. Your Majesty, the latest intelligence from the kingdom of Philomet is that Nanshan City has sent an army of 100,000 to the south. According to their marching route, the target should be Shanhaiguan of their own country. Moreover, there are 50,000 troops in the small town of Philomet, and the enemy army that came to attack should be 150,000. Chen Ping said his analysis. 150,000 troops are not enough to capture Shanhaiguan. The enemy should also know this. Therefore, according to my analysis, the enemy's target should be Gihua City. Chen Ping's duties are not as simple as being responsible for transmitting intelligence. Necessary analysis and judgment are only the basis. An intelligence officer who does not understand military tactics, strategies, politics, people's livelihood, is not a qualified intelligence officer. As for Chen Ping's judgment, that the kingdom of Philomet knew that it could not capture Shanhaiguan with 150,000 troops, it was because he knew that the kingdom of Philomet still had talented people, and the name of Babu, the brain of the kingdom of Philomet, was widely known in the kingdom of Philomet. Haha. After listening to Chen Ping's analysis, Yang Song was so angry that he laughed. He didn't expect that he hadn't attacked Philomet yet, and Philomet actually attacked him first. Isn't this courting death? Did they really think that all these years in the Xia kingdom were wasted? Without saying anything, Yang Song loudly ordered the Jinai Wei outside the door, immediately call Liug, Li Jing, Zhen Yu and others, to come to see me. After these people arrived at his study, Yang Song first asked Chen Ping to tell him the intelligence just now. After listening to Chen Ping's intelligence, Li Jing was the first to clasp his fists and said, Your Majesty, the Northern Yi country is so presumptuous. I suggest that we send troops to attack them immediately. As soon as Li Jing finished speaking, the other three agreed in unison. I second the motion. After Zhen Yu seconded the motion, he immediately continued, Your Majesty, the administrative work for the attack on the Northern Yi has been completed. Zhen Yu was talking about asking the various departments of the administrative department to cooperate with the military department's Bingting to mobilize militias and requisition railways and carriages. Li Jing then reported, Your Majesty, the army is ready and can go out at any time. Without Yang Song's questioning, the main ministers reported their preparations to him. Because when they heard that the Philomet kingdom was the first to invade, they all felt angry about being looked down upon. So Yang Song didn't need to say much. They all knew the purpose of Yang Song calling them. Very good. Yang Song nodded with satisfaction and immediately order each department to prepare, order the entire army to mobilize. After giving a long list of orders, Yang Song said in a serious and profound tone, Everyone, the war has begun. Yes, Your Majesty, I obey your order. Li Jing, start making arrangements. Yang Song has appointed Li Jing as the candidate to lead the army this time. Yes, Your Majesty, I obey your command. Li Jing clasped his fists and saluted to Yang Song, then turned to the messenger who had just arrived and order the 1st Brigade to enter Gihua City to speak and defend. Order the 2nd Brigade to immediately set out from Xianqian Pass and take the train to Shanhaiguan. Order the Cavalry Brigade to take enough dry food out of the pass and let Huo Kubang wait for an opportunity to act. Order the City Guards to enter Shanhaiguan to strengthen defense. Order the Imperial Guards to be Dao County and be ready to support at any time. After all, Xia was originally preparing to send troops to Philomet and had already made a plan. At this time, it was just to modify the plan slightly and win this defensive war first. The military situation was urgent, so Li Jing gave the order in front of Yang Song just to allow Xia's army to act a moment in advance. Xia's army at this time was not like before the opening of the Xianshan Railway, so it could be ignored for a while. Moreover, Xia used all of its army this time, excluding the navy. After all, although the navy was strong, the war was inland, where the navy was not needed at all. This war was the first battle since the upgrade of the Xia army. Yang Song paid special attention to this war. He wanted to see how powerful an army full of muskets could be. As for why the Philomet suddenly launched an attack on Xia, and Xia's intelligence system did not get the news, this was no longer something Yang Song could worry about at the moment. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338, War Begins. Sorry for the duplicate chapter. Half a day ago, in Nanshan City, Parker ordered in the castle hall, this monarch has decided to send troops to attack Xia's Gihua city today. He did not inform anyone in advance of this decision and decided to send troops to attack Xia's Gihua city on the spur of the moment. The dignitaries in the hall were shocked to hear this, and Babu hurriedly asked, Lord, what is the purpose of attacking Xia's Gihua city? Purpose? Of course it's for Xia's wealth. Parker looked as if it was a matter of course, and didn't think it was something he shouldn't do. He continued, I don't need to tell you how much wealth there is in that city. You should know how much it is, right? Seeing the excited looks of many dignitaries in the hall, Parker was also excited and said, as long as we rob Gihua city, we will get rich, and you will be indispensable at that time. These dignitaries have long known about the wealth of Gihua city. If it weren't for the reputation of Xia, they would have taken their private soldiers to plunder it. At this time, they heard that their monarch was also thinking about this idea, and they quickly expressed their support. Your Majesty, why is the attack so hasty this time? The army hasn't gathered yet. Should we wait a while? Babu saw the situation, and knew that this matter was unstoppable, so he had to raise a new question. But Parker didn't care at all. He knew at a glance that they had been prepared. Parker sat on the throne and waved his hand and said, just use the 100,000 soldiers in Nanshan City, plus the 50,000 soldiers defending Xia country in the south, and the food and grass in the city is enough for 150,000 soldiers for a month. It's enough. If Parker hadn't seen that Babu's question made many dignitaries look worried, he wouldn't have needed to explain to Babu at all and just give orders. From this, we can see how much influence Babu has in the country of Philomet. After explaining and dispelling the worries of the dignitaries, Parker immediately ordered, Pollant, you will be responsible for the full command of this attack. Yes, Your Majesty. Pollant is the Knight Commander of the country of Philomet. Only he is qualified to command such a large number of troops. The 100,000 troops in Nanshan City are stationed there permanently to guard against the attack of Xia State, because Nanshan City is only 150 kilometers away from Shanhaiguan. That's why Parker was able to dispatch so many troops at once. Otherwise, Xia State would have known everything clearly when the troops were gathered, and Yang Song and his men would not have been caught off guard. Parker and his men also knew something about Xia State's intelligence capabilities, which was why he was so eager to launch an attack. After all, the Philomet State was just to the north of Xia State, and they had dealt with Xia State a lot, not to mention the assassination incident many years ago. But no matter how much Parker overestimated Xia State's intelligence capabilities, he still underestimated it. What he didn't know was that in this world, birds could still be used to spread information. A distance of 150 kilometers, even if troops were sent immediately, it would take 5 days to get to the outside of Gihua City. Perhaps for people in this world, 5 days is already a very short number and can be completely ignored. Before the opening of the Xianshan Railway, the two brigades, the original regular brigade and the cavalry brigade of Shanhaiguan with less than 20,000 troops might be able to defend Shanhaiguan, but Gihua Cheng would definitely not be able to defend it. But who made Parker choose such a time to attack? Xia Guo came just when he was ready. Isn't this just giving away heads? And Parker chose this time point for a reason. He was still at war with Baxter for a while, and he couldn't wait for a while to come back, fearing that Xia Guo would attack him. Only now that Baxter has been conquered for a while, and Philomet has also recovered, it is a good time to start a war. From another perspective, it is very wise for Parker to choose this time point to start a war, and even caught Xia Guo off guard. It can even be said that, if Parker does not launch his attack at this time, he will never have this opportunity again in the future, although it is not of much use. 5 days later, at dusk, 50,000 vanguard troops of the 150,000 man army of the Free Mid-Kingdom arrived at Gihua City and set up camp in an open area a few kilometers away, waiting for the army behind them. The leader of the army, Poland, had no idea that there were already more than 10,000 troops stationed in Gihua City, and there was another 10,000 man cavalry brigade waiting for an opportunity to move outside. What he didn't know was that tonight was destined to be a restless night. On the wall of Gihua City, Deking reported to Li Jing, "General, as expected, the enemy has set up camp there." Haha. Li Jing heard the report, smiled contemptuously, and asked, "Have you contacted the cavalry brigade? Is the army ready?" Replying to the general, "We have contacted. General Huo of the cavalry brigade has replied that he will attack from the north after we launch the attack." Deking clasped his fists and replied, "The army is fully prepared and can launch the attack as soon as the order is given." Very good. Li Jing turned and walked down the wall while giving an order. Order the entire army to rest, start lining up at 5 in the morning, and launch the attack at 6 o'clock. Remember to pass the time to the cavalry brigade, don't let them wait. Yes, General. 6 o'clock in the morning is the time of deep sleep, and it is also the time when people are most relaxed. The gate of Gihua City quietly opened at an unknown time, and the two armies on the open space outside the city finished lining up at an unknown time. In addition to the cavalry brigade that had already left the border, the army of Xia State that launched the night attack this time also included the 1st Brigade led by Deking and the newly established 2nd Brigade led by Yan Ren, with a total of 33,600 people. Although it is definitely far less than the 150,000 troops of the Fulimid state. According to the Xia army scouts, the enemy troops that arrived tonight were only more than 70,000 and less than 80,000, and the troops behind would not arrive until the next day. After all, the march of the 150,000 troops alone is several kilometers long. But Xia State was not just waiting unprepared these days. When the military council deduced the enemy's camping location, Xia State buried gunpowder barrels underground in that open area. However, due to time constraints, there were not many, but it was enough to cause chaos. Deking, Lu Su, Yan Ren and other generals stood beside Li Jing, quietly looking at the dark night ahead. When the clock pointed to 6 o'clock, Lu Su immediately clasped his fists and said to Li Jing, "General, the whole army is ready. Please give the order." Upon hearing this, Li Jing immediately drew the sword at his waist, pointed forward and ordered loudly, "Order. Light the torches, and the whole army will attack. It's too late before 12 o'clock. Sorry, I'll change it back after I finish writing." Already changed. Chapter 339 Night Raid. Master Night. Master Night. Parland was woken up by his knight in a daze. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was the anxious face of his knight. He rubbed his eyes and asked, "What's wrong?" The knight saw Parland wake up and said anxiously, "Master Knight, a large area of fire was found outside the camp. The Xia army is coming for a night attack." A night attack is not a smear attack. It is pitch black at night and you can't see the road clearly. If there is moonlight, it's okay. If there is no moonlight, it's okay. If there is no moonlight, it's just looking for death. Unfortunately, there is no moonlight tonight, only stars in the sky. However, the enemy's camp is not far from Gihua City, so even if they attack with torches, they won't leave much time for the enemy to prepare. And how could the large area of fire of the Xia army not be discovered by the Fulimite army? When Poland stood on the wall of the camp, it was already 5 or 6 minutes later. How could this happen? Parland was surprised to see the endless sea of fire outside the camp, but he also knew that this was not the time to be surprised, so he ordered, "Wake up the soldiers and prepare for battle." In fact, the camp had already started to make noise at this time. Some soldiers had already woken up and were looking around, curiously asking what was going on. It was probably because the army in this world had no precedent for night battles, otherwise the current situation would be enough to cause a camp roar. Before Parland's order was passed down, a series of loud noises came, making him unable to stand steadily. Suddenly, Parland felt a sense of fear in his heart. He turned around and saw that there were many flames in the camp, and the soldiers were running around in panic. When Parland turned around and looked outside the camp, He knew it was over. This place would probably be where he would die tonight. In the camp of Philomet, as the Zaire army opened fire, it suddenly became more chaotic. Some gathered under the shouts of the officers, some ran around at a loss, and some picked up weapons and attacked the people around them randomly. This is completely a bombing. Li Jing gave an order and the Zaire army launched an attack on the enemy's camp. The Zaire army was less than 4 kilometers away from the Philomet camp. It took less than 10 minutes for them to attack the enemy camp in a neat queue. Li Jing saw that the army had reached a suitable position, so he ordered, "Ignite, detonate the gunpowder barrels." Boom boom boom. Less than a minute after the order was issued, explosions rang out one after another in the enemy's camp, and the flames that shot up into the sky illuminated the entire sky. The enemy troops who had already noticed the Zaire army were suddenly in a panic. King led the 1st Brigade to stop 300 meters away from the enemy camp and ordered, "Begin the artillery attack and break through the enemy's wall." The artillery that had been prepared long ago began to bombard the enemy's camp. The 150 field artillery pieces of the 1st Brigade quickly destroyed all the buildings in the southwest corner of the enemy's camp, allowing the infantry to enter smoothly. Tonight's night attack, because of the heavy siege artillery, it was left on the top of Gihua City. The 1st Brigade led by King So was responsible for attacking the southwest corner of the enemy camp. The 2nd Brigade led by Yanren was responsible for attacking the southeast corner, and the Cavalry Brigade led by Hu Okubang was responsible for attacking the MT north of the enemy's defense. The simultaneous attack from 3 sides made the enemy feel as if there were enemies everywhere on all sides. This was a feeling of being surrounded, which made them even more panicked. After several rounds of bombardment, the area near the camp was basically cleared. Under the order of the general, the artillery began to extend the bombardment to the depths of the enemy camp, and the infantry stepped on the enemy's corpses to attack the camp. The 101st Battalion will attack in the due west, the 102nd Battalion will attack in the northwest, and the 103rd Battalion will attack in the due north. Zhu Cheng is now the commander of the 10th Regiment of the 1st Brigade. He followed King's order and attacked the westernmost part of the enemy camp. Zhu Cheng looked at the enemy troops gathered in the enemy camp with flames rising to the sky and then ordered, "The cavalry battalion will attack the gathering place of the enemy troops. Don't let the enemy troops form a battle formation, and you must disrupt them. The 1st company is ready to fire volleys, the 2nd company will follow, and the 3rd company will outflank them." The battalion commander of the 103rd Battalion, which was responsible for attacking the enemy in the due north, personally led the battalion headquarters of 50 people, led 3 infantry companies and 2 cavalry companies to attack the enemy. The commander of the 103rd Battalion is Li He. He was an ordinary soldier at the beginning. Now he has been through many battles and has been steadily promoted to a battalion commander with his military exploits. If he wants to move up, he must enter the military academy for further studies, but this opportunity is not so easy to get unless there is another national military expansion. At this time, Li is already 30 years old, a major officer, and has 3 children at home. He is no longer the young man he used to be. I can only say that time flies. Li saw dozens of people gathered in the open space in front of the right. An officer in armor was shouting loudly and pointing at him. He immediately ordered, "The 1st Cavalry Company will attack the enemy in front of the right. Remember to come back after the rush." One of the 2 cavalry companies following Li heard his order, put down his musket, drew his sword, and attacked the gathering of the enemy. The officers of the enemy army also saw the Zaire cavalry charging and were shocked. They shouted at the soldiers in a series of loud shouts, which made the soldiers even more panicked. A cavalry company had 60 men and horses. They quickly charged and rushed into the enemy crowd waving their swords. In the blink of an eye, they rushed through the enemy. In this short confrontation, the Zaire cavalry mercilessly hacked and killed, leaving no one alive wherever they passed. When they turned around, they saw only corpses on the ground. Li saw that the cavalry company had wiped out the enemy cleanly and neatly. When the cavalry company turned back, he had already focused on other directions. The 1st company retreats, the 2nd company moves forward, and the 3rd company follows. Li saw that the soldiers of the 1st company had been attacking for a while, so he ordered his soldiers to exchange attack positions. Anyway, the battle tonight would not be over in a short time, and he had to ensure the physical strength of his soldiers. Enemy ahead. Open fire. Bang bang bang. A row of soldiers walking in front saw an enemy soldier appearing in front of them. Following the order of the platoon leader, they immediately fired a volley, and the enemy soldier immediately lay on the ground without moving. The soldiers in the second row behind saw that their comrades in front had already attacked, so they took a few steps forward and walked to the front. The 3 rows of soldiers behind also followed synchronously. At this time, the soldiers in the first row had stopped, and they were reloading. When the reloading was completed, they became the last row. An infantry company has 5 infantry platoons, and they move forward in this way. When they encounter the enemy, they fire a volley. When they come to a tent, they first fire a volley and then destroy and flatten it. They attack all the way and attack the camp and tent. There is no enemy at all. If the enemy camp did not occupy a large area and there were not many enemy troops, the Zaire army might have cleared the enemy troops long ago. However, there are not so many ice in the world, and the Zaire soldiers had to destroy the enemy camp bit by bit. The previous chapter can be read normally. Chapter 340, Pursuing the Victory. Zhu Cheng, who was in charge of the command at the back, saw a messenger riding a horse and hurriedly came to report to him. Reporting to the regiment commander, the 102nd Battalion's attack was blocked, and we request artillery support. 102nd Battalion. Northwest direction. Zhu Cheng looked to the northwest direction with the firelight of the camp, and found that there was a stockade wall and an arrow tower in that direction. No wonder the attack was blocked. He immediately ordered the artillery battalion to aim at the northwest stockade wall and launch artillery fire when ordered. After giving the order to the artillery battalion, Zhu Cheng then ordered the messenger, let the 102nd Battalion retreat 100 meters and pay attention to the artillery fire. When the outer wall of the enemy camp was bombarded, the artillery of the 1st Brigade was concentrated and used. Now that they had entered the enemy camp, the artillery returned to their respective regiments. Zhu Cheng's position was not far from the front line. In fact, he was the commander of the front line, so the order was transmitted quickly. After the artillery battalion received the news that it was ready, he also heard the whistle of the 102nd Battalion retreating in front. Order the artillery battalion to fire. A standard regiment's artillery battalion has 30 field artillery pieces and 10 siege artillery pieces. Although the siege artillery pieces are still on the top of Gihua City, the attack power of 30 field artillery pieces cannot be underestimated. Just a volley, 30 shrapnel shells blasted the northwest wall and the arrow tower into the sky, and the offensive obstacles of the 102nd Infantry Battalion disappeared. The infantry attacked steadily, and the artillery extended the bombardment. When the infantry encountered obstacles in the attack, they called for artillery support, and the cavalry waited for opportunities, harassing from time to time, attacking in groups from time to time, or cleaning up the fish that slipped through the net behind. Such battles were staged from time to time in the enemy camp, causing the enemy to retreat again and again under the bombardment of artillery. But where could they retreat to? When the war started, Hu Okubang led the cavalry brigade to wait in the north of the enemy camp. When he saw the flames and explosions in the enemy camp, he immediately ordered the entire brigade to attack. The cavalry brigade can only exert its maximum combat power in the field battle on the plains. Attacking the fortress is inferior, which is equivalent to using one's own weakness to attack the enemy's strength, which is quite unwise. However, Hu Okubang did not attack randomly, because the enemy camp in the north was completely undefended, without even a simple fence, and all he could see were enemy tents, so he dared to order an attack on the enemy camp. Shanhaiguan is located at the northern foot of the Linhai Mountains. There are mountains outside, and there are not many flat places. The army of the Fulimid Kingdom is stationed in a relatively open place. The continuous camp completely occupies this open area, and there are insurmountable mountains on both sides. This is equivalent to occupying the entire road. As long as a fortress wall is built in the south, the attack of the Zaire army can be blocked. Moreover, the enemy army did not expect that the Zaire army would be the first to launch an attack. Even this fortress wall is just a precaution, not to mention the rear of the camp, which is completely undefended. With the impact of the cavalry brigade, the enemy found that there were also Tsar troops behind them. Now it became very difficult to escape, and they became more panicked. The attack of the cavalry brigade was very fast, sweeping across the entire northern part of the enemy camp like a gust of wind. Of course, there were more fish that slipped through the net. Of course, Okwubeng did not let the cavalry brigade rush too far forward, otherwise they would be attacked by their own artillery, and he would not even have a place to reason. As time went on, the remaining enemy troops all gathered on a small hill in the middle of the camp, preparing to break out. When the Tsar army began to bombard, Portland ran to the middle of the camp and commanded the knights and officers to gather the soldiers and prepare to counterattack. But who knew that the Tsar army's attack was so sharp? When he gathered all the soldiers he could gather, it was already morning. He was standing on the hill and could clearly see the sound of the attack approaching all around the camp. "Master Knight, the Tsar army is about to surround us," a knight reported to Portland, urging him to break out quickly. Originally, Parlant wanted to wait a little longer because there were still soldiers gathering from time to time, but what he saw and heard forced him to make a quick decision. Parlant sighed secretly, knowing that it was too late to save the situation, so he had to give the order, start to break out to the north. There were fewer Tsar troops in the north, and the only way back was to the north. The knight who had been waiting for his words immediately ordered the prepared army to break out to the north. Although the process of this breakout was completely a matter of who could run faster, a part of the army still broke out at the cost of heavy casualties. After the breakout, Parlant no longer thought about how to attack Gihua City, but thought about quickly joining up with the army behind. He was now fortunate that the army in this camp had only half the strength of the attacking army, and there was still a chance to turn defeat into victory. After daybreak, Parlant finally saw the strength of the Tsar army and finally figured out why the Tsar army wanted to attack at night. With less than 50,000 troops, the Tsar army would definitely not win in a head-on battle. This was completely Parlant's wishful thinking. What Parlant didn't know was that his breakout was completely what Li Jing wanted him to do in order to launch a pursuit. After all, a trapped beast's fight is still very dangerous, but as long as they see hope and a way to survive, the soldiers of the Fulamite kingdom will not have the heart to fight. After hearing the news that the enemy had successfully broken through, Li Jing nodded and immediately ordered, "Order Okwubeng to catch up. Don't let the enemy have a chance to catch their breath. Order the 1st Brigade and the 2nd Brigade to follow up and launch a counterattack." After giving the order to Okwubeng, Li Jing continued to order the other 2 brigades, target Nanshan City. On the other side, after Okwubeng received Li Jing's order, he immediately assembled the cavalry brigade and launched a pursuit of the local fleeing army. He followed the fleeing enemy slowly, and from time to time only used the cavalry muskets to attack the enemy's buttocks from a distance to prevent them from running too slowly. Along the way, wounded enemy soldiers were left behind and were cleared by the cavalry brigade. Some enemy soldiers even fell to the ground because they were tired, because they ran too fast and died of exhaustion. "Hurry up and get in. The Tsar army is catching up again. Let me in quickly. I'm so tired, I don't want to run anymore." Outside the southern garrison town of the Fremite Kingdom, a large group of noisy soldiers gathered outside the town, all pushing and clamoring to get into the town first. It was already evening, and after a day of running, the Fremite soldiers finally ran to this town only 50 kilometers away from the planned city. Lurk saw that the enemy's deserters were blocked outside the town. His eyes lit up, and he hurriedly suggested to Okwubeng, "General, this is a good opportunity." "What a good opportunity." Okwubeng also saw the situation of the enemy, and after replying to Lurk, he immediately ordered, "Cavalry brigade attack, target, enemy outside the city." Help. Save me, I don't want to die. Let me in quickly, don't close the door." Seeing that the knights of the Tsar army launched an attack, under the order of Parlant who entered the town first, the town firmly closed the city gate and killed some soldiers blocking the city gate before closing the city gate completely. The soldiers on the city wall watched the soldiers under the city being killed by the Tsar army in a few seconds. This taste is not good at all, and the blow to the morale of the Fulamite army can be imagined. Chapter 341. Battle outside the town. That night, the residents of Gihua City were awakened early. They didn't dare to go out to the streets to find out what was going on until the curfew was lifted at dawn. Bang 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 bang. Tom was looking at the street outside through the window on the second floor. Suddenly, there was a rapid knock on the door downstairs. He was startled and hurried downstairs. Tom walked to the door and whispered, "Who is it? What's the matter?" He repeated this sentence in Chinese, fearing that it was the Zaya people who came to the door. "Tom, it's me, Belle." Belle also answered in a low voice outside the door. He was also afraid of attracting other people's attention. When Tom heard it was Belle, he hurriedly opened the door a small hole that was only enough for one person to pass sideways, let the other party in, and then immediately closed the door. The two walked to the middle of the house, and Tom asked, "Belle, what's the matter? What happened outside the city this morning?" He didn't know that the army of the Freemite Kingdom attacked the Gihua city of the Zaya Kingdom, and no one contacted him. Belle sat down at the table, reached out to pour himself a glass of water, drank it in one gulp, and after a long breath, he replied, "Of course it's again. Did you know? Last night? No, it should be this morning. The Zaya people went to war with the Falamite country." Zaya and Falamite went to war? Impossible. Hasn't Zaya always had a good relationship with Falamite? How come they suddenly went to war? Tom was shocked when he heard this and asked questions repeatedly. He was just a low-level intelligence officer and he didn't know many things about Zaya and Falamite. Although he felt something was wrong, he hadn't seen the Falamite caravan for a while, but in his opinion, even if the relationship was not good, it wouldn't lead to a war. Who knew that they would suddenly fight? I don't know about that. Belle shook his head when he heard Tom's question, and then he pointed to the direction outside the city and said, "But I know that it must be the Falamite Kingdom that came to attack the Zaya Kingdom." Tom could guess this without Belle saying it. After all, the battlefield was outside Gihua City, and there were Zaya Kingdom troops coming in and out in the past few days, so he couldn't help but know. Now Tom was worried about his family in Mansion City, because he had always lived in Gihua City, and he knew the strength of Zaya Kingdom. Falamite Kingdom took the initiative to go to war with Zaya Kingdom at this time, and he was not optimistic about the forces he was loyal to. The reality was just as Tom expected. Although the Falamite Kingdom had a large army, it was defeated by the Zaya Kingdom army. In the col outside the southern town of Falamite, there were two armies facing each other at this moment, the Zaya Kingdom army in the south, and the Falamite Kingdom army with its back to the town in the north. The formation of the Zaya Kingdom army was to place the cavalry in the middle of the cols on both sides, the infantry in the col, and the artillery on the top of the colonel. The army of the Freemite Kingdom was not so particular. At a glance, whether it was on the col or in the col, it was all densely packed, and it was unknown how many people there were. The army of the Zaya Kingdom is only this small. Sure enough, they took advantage of the sneak attack. After seeing the Zaya Kingdom army on the opposite side, Parlant had an expression on his face that was as expected. But then he frowned and said to himself in some confusion, "Zaya Kingdom dares to fight head-on with such a small number of people. Will they have any tricks?" After that, Parlant, who had not figured it out, stopped thinking about the intentions of the Zaya Kingdom army. Anyway, as long as it was a head-on battle, he didn't believe that his nearly 100,000 troops could not defeat the Zaya Kingdom's 30,000 plus troops on the opposite side. Although Parlant heard that the Baxter Kingdom had not defeated the 50,000 troops of the Zaya Kingdom with 120,000 people, he didn't believe this news at all. Not only Parlant, but also everyone in the Freemite Kingdom, including Parker, did not believe this news. It must be that the army of the Baxter Kingdom was too weak, or that the Baxter Kingdom exaggerated it to save face. Anyway, no matter what, they did not believe it, or they should not dare to believe it. If this news is true, then this time the troops are sending their own deaths. Parlant hurriedly shook his head and suppressed these sudden thoughts. He saw that the time was almost up, and immediately roared and ordered, "All troops attack. All of you rush up for this night, and kill all the Zaya army on the opposite side for this night. Kill. Charge." The Freemite army rushed towards the Zaya army. The two armies were only more than 1 kilometer apart. With this rush, the Freemite army immediately entered the artillery range of the Zaya army. Li Jing saw the enemy charging and ordered without hesitation, "All troops, fire." Boom boom boom. The artilleryman who had been preparing for a long time pulled the flintlock of the artillery and let the loaded shells fly into the crowd of enemy troops. A total of 300 field artillery pieces from the two brigades bombarded the enemy together. The shells exploded from time to time in the army of the Philimid Kingdom. The explosions, flames, and smoke seemed to bury the enemy for a while. But after a mountain breeze blew and the smoke dispersed, it was discovered that the bombardment just now seemed to have never happened. The gap created by the bombardment was filled by the enemy soldiers behind in an instant. Even if one shell destroyed 10 enemies, 300 shells would only destroy 3,000 enemies. For the nearly 100,000 enemy troops, this was just a drop in the bucket. There was no effective result, not to mention that one shrapnel bomb could not destroy 10 enemy soldiers at all. After Poland saw that the artillery of the Zaire army had no effect, he smiled contemptuously and said, "It turns out that the artillery of the Zaire army, which has always been praised as very powerful, is just like this. This knight will definitely win today." In contrast to Poland, Li Jing frowned and looked ugly when he saw the soldiers on the opposite side like a sea of tide. He immediately ordered, "Artillery attack the enemy's depth. Infantry prepare to engage." Li Jing was preparing to block the enemy's charge first, so that the infantry would have time to clean up the enemy soldiers rushing in front. However, after several rounds of artillery fire, Li Jing's face became even uglier. He didn't expect that the artillery's blocking had no effect at all. Even if a round of artillery burst cleared a group of enemy troops, the endless enemy soldiers behind them would immediately fill in. That blank period did not last long at all. Seeing this situation, Li Jing immediately ordered, "Don't stop the artillery. Order the cavalry to charge down, disrupt the enemy, slow down the enemy's attack speed, and order the cavalry to remember not to fight and leave as soon as they touch, and don't fight." The artillery was still doing its best to reduce the enemy's rear forces, making the crowd less dense, but the number of enemy troops rushing over was still too large. Otherwise Li Jing would not want to let the cavalry charge now. But there were too many enemy troops, and if there was no cavalry charge, the infantry of the Zaire army would be in trouble. And if the cavalry's charge stopped or was blocked, the cavalry would be trapped in the enemy's crowd. Even with the advantage in weapons, it was only a matter of time before the cavalry that stopped was eliminated. Therefore, Li Jing only allowed the cavalry to charge in one wave, and they could not charge directly. Li Jing did not need to command the tactics. He only needed to control the overall situation, and Hu Okubeng would command the details. Chapter 342, The Power of the Gun. Cavalry, listen up, charge. Hu Okubeng received Li Jing's order and immediately issued the charge order. Hu Okubeng was commanding on the eastern col, while the cavalry on the opposite col was commanded by Liuqi. When Liuqi saw the flag beside Hu Okubeng, he led the cavalry to rush down at almost the same time. With the acceleration from top to bottom, the cavalry on both sides of the col rushed into the middle of the front of the enemy army with the force of thunder, and separated about 10,000 to 20,000 enemy troops. Two standard brigades, excluding subordinate units at all levels. Each brigade has 5,250 cavalry. The two brigades plus the cavalry brigade have a total of 21,700 cavalry, divided into two parts, which means that there are more than 10,000 cavalry on each side. So many cavalry rushed down from top to bottom. Although they were all light cavalry, not heavy cavalry, the impact they carried was not small at all. In just a blink of an eye, the enemy army was divided into the front and back. Kill. Charge. Charge. Don't stop. The rumbling sound of horse hooves resounded through the sky on the battlefield, and the sounds of fighting, chopping, and occasional muskets rose and fell throughout the valley. Seeing the soldiers behind the enemy rushing up, Hu Okubeng immediately ordered, "Retreat, retreat quickly, and retreat from both sides of the mountain." In the noisy battlefield, the voice of one person could not be heard very far, but Hu Okubeng's loud order only needed to be heard by the messenger behind him. Flags, horns, and whistles are the way to pass orders. After receiving the military order, the officers present immediately led their soldiers to rush up to the valleys on both sides, but the speed of rushing out was far less than when they came down. The cavalry present finally rushed out before the enemy army closed in and formed a team halfway up the valley to prepare for another battle. When the cavalry attacked the enemy, the infantry who had been in formation for a long time also ushered in a confrontation. After being divided by the cavalry, the 10,000 or 20,000 enemy soldiers at the front continued to attack the infantry of the Zaire army with no intention of stopping. "Ready your musketeers." As the enemy approached, the command was also heard in the Zaire army. The middle and grassroots officers on the front line were in charge of the specific operations of the musketeers, while Deking and Yanren were only responsible for the operation of the formation. Seeing that the enemy soldiers were about to rush within 100 meters, Leahy, the battalion commander of the 103rd Battalion of the 10th Regiment of the 1st Brigade, ordered, "The 1st Company aims, the 2nd Company is ready, and the 3rd Company is ready." At this moment, the grassroots commanders of the large-scale troop battles are no longer at the company and platoon level, but at the battalion level. The officers at the regiment level can only be regarded as intermediate level officers who play a regulating role. There are 60 musketeers in an infantry company, and 3 infantry companies in a battalion, and 2 other cavalry companies have been withdrawn. In this way, a battalion with 3 companies and a total of 180 musketeers, excluding the battalion headquarters, is just a combat unit. A standard regiment has 3 standard battalions of 540 musketeers, which is a basic unit, excluding the artillery battalion, cavalry battalion and regimental headquarters. A standard brigade has 5 basic units of 540 people, which means only 2,700 people. A standard brigade has 11,200 people, consisting of 2,700 musketeers, 5,250 cavalry, more than 1,200 artillery, and a brigade headquarters of 2,000 people. The 2 standard brigades, including subordinate units at all levels, have a total of more than 6,000 musketeers lined up in the valley, facing more than 10,000 enemy troops. One combat unit after another was neatly arranged in the valley, waiting for the enemy to enter the range. "Shoot." Lee saw the enemy enter the effective range of 100 meters and immediately issued an order to take turns shooting. After receiving Lee's order, the captain of the 1st Company, which was in the front row, immediately raised his sword and pointed it at the enemy soldiers in front and ordered, "1st Company, fire." The 60 musketeers in the front row pulled the trigger at almost the same time. With a bang, it seemed as if there was only one sound, and a puff of smoke rose from the front of the formation. The enemy soldiers on the opposite side fell down, making the already sparse crowd of the low army even sparser. The soldiers in the front row who had fired a shot immediately stood still and reloaded ammunition on the spot. The captain of the 2nd Company in the 2nd row behind him immediately ordered, "2nd Company, move forward, fire." The soldiers in the back row passed the soldiers in the front row and fired another round of volleys at the enemy with their muskets. Then the soldiers in the last row immediately passed the soldiers who had just finished shooting and pulled the trigger at the captain's command of fire. In this way, row after row of soldiers took turns shooting, and the enemy troops on the opposite side became fewer and fewer, while the soldiers of the Zaire Kingdom launched attacks step by step until the enemy troops in front stopped moving forward. More than 6,000 musketeers were arranged in 3 rows, with more than 2,000 soldiers in each row, and the row was nearly 2,000 meters wide, basically from the middle of the col on this side to the middle of the col on the other side, and there was no depth at all. The 10,000 or 20,000 enemy soldiers in front of the enemy were almost wiped out in less than a moment, and the cavalry responsible for blocking also withdrew from the battle. The rest depended on the more than 6,000 musketeers. In fact, the enemy soldiers in the front had wanted to turn around and flee after the artillery bombardment, cavalry charge, and repeated blows from the muskets, but the enemy soldiers behind them kept rushing up, leaving them with nowhere to escape, and they had to continue forward under the coercion of their comrades behind them. Bang, bang, bang. The crisp sound of muskets continued in a series, and the enemy fell row after row. The short 70 to 80 meters in the middle was like a natural moat. No matter how hard they rushed, they could not rush up. There were even signs of corpses piling up. Just these more than 6,000 musketeers, they were not at a disadvantage against tens of thousands of enemy troops. However, after the enemy troops on the col rushed over, the situation changed. Although the artillery at the end of the col was basically firing non-stop, it could only attack the enemy troops below the mountain. Because of the angle problem, the artillery attack on the enemy troops halfway up the mountain and on the top of the mountain was not ideal. The enemy commander was not a fool. Seeing that the people below the mountain were beaten so badly, he ordered the soldiers to rush over from the mountains on both sides. Li Jing saw the enemy troops who had just arrived due to the undulating terrain on the mountain valley approaching, and immediately gave the order the cavalry to dismount and form a battle array. The more than 20,000 cavalry were all equipped with muskets. When they rushed down the mountain valley just now, the first round of attack was the cavalry muskets in their hands. Now because of the terrain, the cavalry has no conditions to exert its mobility, so Li Jing had to let the cavalry dismount and form a battle array. There are more than 20,000 people here, and the blow to the enemy is more than just 6,000 infantry. The range of cavalry muskets is 10 to 20 meters shorter than that of infantry muskets, but it is actually the same for the enemy, who can't rush over anyway. As the cavalry dismounted to fight, the sound of muskets on the entire battlefield became louder, and the sound of artillery fire made the enemy pay a heavy price. Correction completed. Changed. Chapter 343 Between Advance and Retreat. Li Jing frowned as he watched the enemy army launch continuous attacks like a tide. At this moment, it depends on which side will be the first to give up. Will the army of the Fulimit Kingdom fail to withstand the huge casualties and flee, or will the army of the Xia Kingdom fail to withstand the pressure and collapse first? But Li Jing will not put victory on such uncertain conditions. Besides, even if the enemy army escapes at this time, it will not be what he wants. Li Jing stood on a mountain like a pine tree. A gust of mountain wind came over, blowing the battle flags and robes. He stretched out his hand and waved a loud order. Order, the army in the valley retreat to the middle of the mountain and hold the two sides of the mountain. Order, the cavalry on the top of the mountain, advance 100 meters. Order, half of the artillery will attack the enemy on the side of the mountain. A series of orders were issued from Li Jing's mouth, and then the messengers passed the orders to the various armies of the Xia army. Soon, more than 6,000 infantrymen were divided into two parts according to their respective affiliations. The 1st Brigade retreated to the high ground in the west, and the 2nd Brigade retreated to the high ground in the east. The two high grounds were more than 2 kilometers apart, and both sides could clearly see the battle on the opposite side. The originally lush trees had been destroyed by the battle of several hours. Whether it was the attacking side's thorns and the defending side's muskets and artillery, the vegetation here was considered to have suffered. However, next year, the fertile land here will become more lush. Shoot, rotate, fire the cannons, reload quickly. Be careful of the enemy's arrows. Quickly carry the injured down and fill the gap behind. Retreat to the next place. Order the 12th Regiment to advance 300 meters forward and then retreat 100 meters. The soldiers, officers, and generals of the Xia Kingdom kept fighting and commanding, and they were relaxed between advancing and retreating, making the enemy pay a heavy price for every step. Hurry up, the ones above are almost exhausted. Don't push me, I don't want to. Don't go up, I'll die. The Knight Commander has ordered that those who retreat or stop will be executed. No, don't kill me, Mom, I'm scared. Look, the Xia army is retreating. They are really almost exhausted. Compared with the Xia army, which can advance and retreat freely, the attack of the Fulimit army is much more difficult. The Xia army seems to be likely to collapse at any time, which makes them think it's almost there. Just make another effort. The Xia army will be defeated, and we will win. They don't know that this is exactly what Li Jing wants to see. Otherwise, when the enemy army of 30,000 to 40,000 was destroyed, the Fulimit army would have shown signs of collapse, and they would not be like this, fighting hard and trying to rush up. Report to the Knight Commander, our army suffered heavy casualties, and the knights on the front line request to retreat. Pilot heard this battle report. This was the nth time he had heard the same battle report. Before he could react, another soldier came to report. Report to the Knight Commander, the Xia army has been driven to the top of the mountain, and they are about to be wiped out. Retreat? Destroy? Pilot now didn't know what decision to make, or what order to give. The two battle reports were completely two extremes. He couldn't make an accurate judgment on whether he would win or lose. However, he would rather believe the news that the Zaire army was about to be wiped out than believe the lie that he was going to lose. Because Pollitt knew that if 100,000 troops couldn't beat the Zaire army of just over 30,000, then he really didn't dare to think about what the future of the Philimid country would be like. Therefore, he could only try his best to attack now. As long as he could win this war, no matter how big the loss was, it was worth it. And now there was the battle report that the Zaire army was about to be wiped out, to add confidence to him. As the battle continued, what Pollitt didn't know was that his so-called 100,000 man army had already suffered heavy losses. If he could count them, he would know that his 100,000 man army was now only about 50,000, a full loss of half. Haha. Li Jing stood on the top of the mountain and leaned over to look at the enemy army getting closer and closer. When he saw the corpses all over the mountain, he couldn't help but chuckle. He looked at the sky again. The golden crow had gradually set in the west. He nodded secretly and ordered, "It's almost time, and the soldiers are tired. Order all troops to attack." More than 5 hours had passed since the battle started in the morning. If the Zaire army hadn't used all muskets, they would have been exhausted after such a long battle. Unlike now, when they heard the order to attack, the soldiers were still full of energy to launch the attack. This shows the advantage of the musket. It consumes very little physical strength for the soldiers. As long as there is enough ammunition, the soldiers who have been strictly trained can still persist in the 5-hour battle. Speaking of fatigue, the most tired of the Zaire army should be the artillery. Operating artillery is a physical job, carrying ammunition, loading ammunition, cleaning the barrel. The artillery took several rounds of rest. Besides, artillery can't shoot for a long time. It will stop to cool the barrel after a while. This is the time for the artillery to rest, and the time for the enemy to launch a fierce attack. However, all these tiredness and hard work are worth it. At this moment, the commander of the Zaire army, Li Jing, has issued an order for the whole army to attack. The 10th regiment begins to attack. The 11th regiment begins to attack. The 12th regiment begins to attack. The 20th regiment begins to attack. The 21st regiment begins to attack. The order to attack resounded throughout the battlefield at this time, making the enemy troops who attacked the mountain at a loss. Although they didn't understand the orders of the Zaire army, they still instinctively felt bad from the state of the Zaire army. The first to launch the attack was the artillery. The 300 field artillery on the two hills launched an indiscriminate and continuous attack on the enemy troops below the mountain. The explosions were so dense and rapid that the enemy, whose morale was about to collapse, ran around in panic, not knowing where to escape. A soldier from the kingdom of Philimid hid behind a tree root with his head in his arms, trembling and covering his ears, enduring the continuous falling of dirt and gravel on his body. Suddenly, he felt something was wrong under him. He lowered his head and opened his eyes to see that he was squatting on a corpse with a big black hole on its head. Ah! The soldier couldn't bear it and shouted loudly in fear. He stood up and felt the explosions in his ears gradually disappear. He looked around and couldn't believe what he saw. Ah! Another shout. The soldier looked at the corpses everywhere around him. He didn't know when there were so many corpses around him, covering the ground with a layer. If he looked carefully, he would find that all the bodies were from the Philimid soldiers, but the soldier no longer had the energy to observe them. He only saw 4 or 5 Philimid soldiers running down the mountain, stepping on the bodies on the ground. No, they should have escaped. Bang bang bang, several familiar sounds came from behind. The soldier only felt something flying past his cheek, and a trace of blood appeared on the back of the soldier who was running down the mountain beside him. In the blink of an eye, he became one of the bodies on the ground. The soldier seemed to have a premonition of something. He turned back slowly with a stiff body and saw a row of Zaire soldiers lined up from the woods and stopped more than 50 meters in front of him. There seemed to be more Zaire soldiers behind them. Raise your guns, get ready to shoot. Bang bang bang. The soldier didn't understand Zaire Guo's command. He just saw this row of Zaire Guo soldiers holding a long, strange black stick. Then there was a burst of green smoke and a loud noise coming out from the front of the black stick. Then there was a familiar crisp sound. Then he felt like his body was hit by something. He fell to the ground. In his last moments, He looked at the gradually dimming sky through the sparse green smoke. He finally understood what the sound was. The last thought in his mind was, so this is the weapon of the Zyre army. It's so powerful. Chapter 344. Counterattack. Defeated. Completely defeated. Parland couldn't believe it. Just a moment ago, there was a battle report saying that the Zyre army had been driven to the top of the mountain. Now he was told that his 100,000 man army was defeated, and it was a complete and utter defeat. How could he believe it? But the soldiers who turned around and fled had to make him believe it. The terrified faces of the soldiers passing by him passed by one after another in front of him. Sir Knight, run quickly, the Zyre army is chasing us. A knight ran over from the front with a face full of gunpowder. If it weren't for the knight's conspicuous equipment, Parland couldn't believe that this appearance was actually the appearance of an elegant knight. Hearing the knight's terrified words, Brand couldn't believe it and asked angrily, run. Why are you running? Have you forgotten the knight's code? Knight's code? Only then did the knight come back to his senses from the fear of the Zyre army. With a look of shame, he replied, yes, Sir Knight, I will go to fight now. Come back. Seeing the knight's behavior, Brand knew that now was not the time to dwell on these things, and asked, what's going on? Didn't they say that the Zyre army was surrounded on the top of the mountain? Why did they lose? Replying to Sir Knight, all this is a conspiracy of the Zyre army. Hearing Brand's question, the knight suddenly became angry and said, those Zyre soldiers are luring us to attack. If not, if the Zyre army hadn't launched an attack, our army would have been almost wiped out. So that's it. So that's the case. After hearing the knight's words, Brand finally understood why the Zyre army attacked and retreated from time to time. It turned out that they were consuming his troops. After he figured it out, he felt like a tiny bug being played around by the Zyre army. The blow was so great that he even thought it was a terrible nightmare. The knight saw Parlet, who was distracted and ignored him. He rolled his eyes and saw that no one noticed him. He quietly left Pollard's side, took off the conspicuous equipment and decorations on his body, and joined the fleeing crowd. The knight glanced in the direction of Pollard in the crowd and whispered, Knight's code? Bah. Is life important? If it weren't for pleasing you and having a merit after escaping, I would have run away long ago and would not have informed you. For high-level nobles like Parlet, the honor they have may be more important than life, but for those knights who have been promoted from the bottom, these are just capital for showing off in normal times. Once they encounter a matter of life and death, life is definitely more important. Master Knight, Master Knight. Parlet's guards also heard the words of the low-level knight. Seeing Pollard standing there motionless for a long time, they stepped forward and whispered a few words. Ah. Parland came back from his trance. Seeing that the number of fleeing soldiers was decreasing and the sound was getting closer, he knew that the Zyre army had really launched an attack. He said helplessly and powerlessly, let's go, let's all go. After that, he mounted his wildebeest and headed north under the escort of the guards. The attack of the Zyre army was very fierce. After defeating the enemy with the last effort, the cavalry was of course the first to launch a pursuit. The war horses had been resting behind the mountain for a whole day. At this time, they were in high spirits. They ran without hesitation and launched a series of attacks on the back of the enemy. Since the Zyre army changed its equipment, the cavalry's equipment has also changed a lot. Among them, the heavy cavalry with full armor is no longer there, but a large team is still retained in the Jilaiwi for the Guard of Honor. The current cavalry equipment is similar to the original light cavalry. The same breastplate and helmet protect the important parts of the body. The sword in the weapon has not been cancelled, but the crossbow has been replaced with a cavalry musket, and there is an ammunition bag on the waist, so that you can dismount and fight in formation when necessary. If the cavalry was the first to launch the pursuit, then the artillery was the first to launch the attack. The artillery is also the army with the least change. Except for the standard musket for each person, there is no change in the rest, and even the short sword on the waist has not been cancelled. However, the Zyre kingdom still follows the principle of long-range attack with artillery. In the army, the ratio of artillery is very high. Basically, there is one artillery for every 62 soldiers. If the Xia kingdom had not entered the Steam Age and had a complete and powerful industrial capacity, Yang Song would not dare to use artillery like this, and even dared not expand the army on a large scale for this. The infantry has changed the most. The original long spearmen, sword and shield soldiers, heavy soldiers, crossbowmen, strong crossbowmen and other arms are all gone. Except for a brigade of heavy soldiers who served as a guard of honor in the Jinai Wei, they all became musketeers. The weapons and equipment of the musketeers are still very different from those of the musketeers in Yang Song's previous world. For example, the infantry breastplate and helmet are not cancelled. After all, the enemy that Xia Jiuo needs to deal with is not a hot weapon army that ignores individual defense. And many concepts are also very different from the previous musketeer army, such as fixed ammunition, combat rules, combat methods, and no military bands with flutes and drums. After all, the development of the army still depends on demand. If the enemy army is also an army of the same level and equipment as Xia Jiuo, it will be a completely different picture. By the end of the 14th year of Xian Qi, the population of Xia Jiuo had reached 17 million, but even if the army included the number of navy, it was only less than 70,000, and the ratio of military to civilian reached 4,000ths. Such a large ratio of military to civilian is unprecedented. It is not that Xia Jiuo does not have enough soldiers, not enough officers, and not wanting to expand the army, but the navy and artillery are really a very expensive big household, because if a few more brigades are armed in this way, Xia Jiuo will go bankrupt. Order the artillery to keep up with the attacking army. Li Jing saw that the battle was settled on the top of the mountain, smiled and ordered, let the militia behind come up to clean up the battlefield. By the way, remember to ask Gihua City to send a team to take a look. Li Jing asked Gihua City to send a delegation after Yang Song and Liug and others discussed. The people in this delegation must all be natives living in Gihua City, and their intention is self-evident. While the militia in the rear was cleaning the battlefield and the delegation was shocked, the army in the front had already attacked the outside of the town. This town was originally just an ordinary town, but since the Xia kingdom occupied the Linhai Basin and built Gihua City, the Fulamite kingdom has built this town into a military town. Therefore, it is more like a fortress than a town. The town's walls have also been expanded, completely blocking the passage between the two mountains, so that the passing caravans must pay a considerable toll again if they want to reach Gihua City. But at this moment, outside the town, the sound of war drums and the waving of war flags were already heard. The army of the Xia kingdom had pursued here and was about to launch a siege belonging to the Xia kingdom. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345, Invasion of the Enemy Country. What's going on? Why haven't they attacked the city yet? Li Jing finally arrived outside the town on his warhorse. Seeing the army arrayed outside the town, he was very confused and told the messenger, "Ask Deking and Yan Ren to come see me." Logically, they should have attacked the town after such a long time, but what Li Jing saw now was that the city wall in front of him was still standing intact, although it was emitting smoke and had some holes. "General, I have ordered the artillery to bombard the enemy's city wall for nearly half an hour, but it has no effect. I suggest that the siege artillery be deployed." Deking heard Li Jing's order and rushed to Li Jing's location with Yan Ren one after another. After hearing Deking's answer, Li Jing asked, "Can it be broken? Have you tried to blow up the city wall with gunpowder bags?" "General, we have tried," Yan Ren replied, "but there is a large moat outside the enemy city, and the soldiers can't get close to the city wall at all." Then Li Jing asked a few more questions, looking at the low city wall in front of him, frowning. He didn't expect that the Xia army, which had always been invincible, would be blocked by a mere city wall. Li Jing learned from the intelligence department that the city wall of the town in front of him was built with reference to the city wall of Gihua City. It was very different from the thin wall of the previous world, and the thickness was very thick. No wonder the artillery couldn't blow it open. Haha, it's just like that. The general has been prepared for this. After listening to the report of Deking and Yan Ren, Li Jing laughed twice and ordered, "Let the militia behind bring up the prepared things." How could the intelligence of this town escape the intelligence of the Xia Kingdom? It was just that the sudden attack by the Philimid Kingdom made the Xia Kingdom not fully prepared. Otherwise, how could this wall stop the Xia Kingdom's army? However, Yang Ren in the rear had already transported the materials urgently needed by the front army, including tools such as shovels, pickaxes, and sacks. Yang Ren even transported the siege artillery of the two brigades of Gihua City under the order of Li Jing. Under the urging of Li Jing, before dark that day, a total of 60 siege artillery and other materials from the two brigades were all transported to the Xia Kingdom camp in the town, and the attack would be officially launched at dawn the next day. This attack was not only a turning point for the Xia Kingdom to repel the invasion of the Philimid Kingdom, but also a turning point for the Xia Kingdom's army to officially attack the Philimid Kingdom, that is, from the defensive stage to the offensive stage. After a night's rest, the soldiers of the Xia Kingdom army lined up outside the town in high spirits, ready to launch an attack. In contrast to the high morale of the Xia Kingdom army was the Philimid Kingdom army in the town. After a great defeat, the town endured the continuous bombardment of the Xia state's artillery. If the city wall had not blocked the bombardment of the artillery and restored the morale of these soldiers, they would have abandoned the city and fled. However, when the next day dawned, the soldiers of the Philimid state found that tens of thousands of Xia people had appeared outside the town at some point, digging soil and rocks at the foot of the mountain not far away. Without anyone's reminder, all the soldiers of the Philimid state knew that the Xia state was preparing to fill up the moat outside the town. How could this be? If the Xia army really filled up the moat, wouldn't it be more difficult for them to defend the city? But they had no choice but to watch the moat outside the city being filled up quickly. After seeing this, Parland was about to let the soldiers shoot arrows at the Xia army filling the soil below, but before he could say this, he was frightened by a series of loud noises outside the town and jumped off the city wall. This voice was very familiar to Parland and his men. It was the powerful weapon of Xia state called artillery. If he had been a step slower in running down the city wall, he might have been buried in the sea of fire on the top of the city like other soldiers of Philimid. Xia state actually asked the militia to fill the soil. It must have been prepared. Basically, the artillery never stopped suppressing the top of the city. Even the siege artillery that had just arrived last night was involved. The power of siege artillery is not comparable to field artillery. It was specially designed for siege. The solid iron eggs carried strong kinetic energy and hit the city wall one after another. Even the thick city wall could not help shaking. In less than an hour, some clearly visible cracks appeared on the city wall that was bombarded. Then they became larger and larger. Until a certain time, the city wall could no longer withstand it and collapsed. This section of the collapsed city wall was not only attacked by siege artillery, but also withstood multiple rounds of gunpowder bag explosions after the moat was filled. The town's walls were strong enough to hold out for such a long time under such a high-intensity attack. After a whole morning of attack, the city wall finally collapsed. Li Jing couldn't wait to order, "Enter the city." The next battle was much simpler. The soldiers lined up in a battle line and entered the city from the collapsed city wall. As for why they didn't attack from the city gate, it was because Poland had ordered the city gate to be blocked long ago. With the thickness of the city gate, it would be faster to attack from the nearby city wall. The soldiers of the Xia Kingdom crossed the filled moat, stepped over the collapsed city wall, and easily attacked the city from the ruins. When the soldiers entered the city, they found that there was no resistance at all. The whole city was completely an empty city. A few hours ago, when Polat found that the number of Xia's army had more than doubled and was still filling the moat, he knew that the town could no longer be defended, so he ordered his knights to lead the soldiers to continue defending, and then he fled the city with his guards and confidants. Since Polat, the commander, had fled, how could the officers and soldiers under him continue to hold on? Therefore, as soon as Polat ran away, the soldiers behind him followed suit. In fact, if Polat did not run away, the soldiers defending the town would have fled first, but Polat's behavior had staged this process in advance. After a series of defeats, The morale of the Free Might Army had already fallen to the bottom, and the increase in the number of Zaya's army and the overwhelming momentum made the Free Might Army completely lose the last bit of reason and courage, and only the instinctive desire to escape was left. So when the Zaya soldiers stepped into the town, it had already become an empty city. Escaped. When Li Jing learned that he had occupied only an empty city, he was both surprised and a little disappointed. He was surprised that the battle ended without any damage, but he was disappointed that he had wasted so much effort, but did not kill many enemies. Li Jing's thoughts only existed in his mind for a few seconds. He immediately ordered this situation: all troops attack. Target, Nanshan City. When the Zaya army continued to attack the capital of Fulham at Nanshan City, Lu Su suddenly ran to Li Jing's side and clasped his fists and said, "General, what should we name the city just now? In the Zaya country, there are specific names for the place names of this world. Some are transliterated, some are translated, and some are difficult to translate. If there is no specific meaning, the Zaya country will give it a name. The small town just now is the last type, so Lu Su asked Li Jing about the name. Li Jing thought about Lu Su's question for a moment and said, "This city is the first important town outside Shanhaiguan, so let's call it Penguin City." Chapter 346, Estrangement. On the eve of the attack by the Kingdom of Fulham on the Kingdom of Zaya, that is, at the end of the 14th year of Xian Qi, the Kingdom of Zaya was also preparing to attack the Kingdom of Fulham. The intelligence personnel of the Kingdom of Zaya and the Kingdom of Fulham officially took action. According to Chen Ping's order, they tried to contact the former lords who were forced to be loyal to Parker in the past. In the north of the former Nanshan territory, in a Viscount's castle that surrendered and swore allegiance to the Kingdom of Fulham, Viscount Andre received a special guest in a remote room on the second floor. "You said you are from Zaya. Is there any proof?" Andre met this person who was not from Zaya, but claimed to be from Zaya. Bob didn't know how many times he had heard this question. Anyway, he would be asked this question every time he explained his identity, and he was used to it. So he was helpless in his heart, but he replied calmly on the surface. "It is normal for the Viscount to have this question, but it is not important whether I'm really from Zaya. What is important is what I'm going to say next." Bob had gone out of the pass to assassinate the dignitaries of Nanshan territory before the outbreak of the plague outside the pass. Later, when the plague broke out, he provided key intelligence to Zaya. Finally, after returning to Zaya for further training, he is now the intelligence director of a region outside the pass. This time he received an order from Zaya. Zaya asked him to contact these surrendered lords and told him to tell these former lords to persuade them to rebel in order to restore their former glory. Zaya would support these former lords. So Bob now came to Andre's castle, and in order to let Bob and other intelligence personnel have a bottom line, Zaya selectively told them the intelligence that Zaya would attack Fulham, but in order to prevent double agents, they did not tell them the specific time. After Bob finished saying this, seeing that Andre didn't say anything, he didn't directly state his purpose, but asked, "Your Excellency Viscount, do you really want to be enslaved by an ancient lord for your entire life, or even for eternity?" Hearing this, Andre became furious and said, "How dare you? This Viscount is loyal to the monarch, and you'd better stop spreading rumors here. Be careful or I'll arrest you and send you to Nanshan City." "Your Excellency Viscount, let's be frank." Bob was not worried at all when he saw that the other party was angry. Instead, he became more confident. He continued, "If you are really not dissatisfied with Nanshan Lord, you would have directly asked someone to arrest me just now, and you wouldn't have said these words to me." Bob's cruel training in the Zaya country was not in vain. He was confident that he had a good grasp of people's hearts, except for those Zaya people who were like gods. When Andre heard what Bob said, the anger on his face disappeared, replaced by a face full of surprise, and asked seriously, "Who are you?" I've already said that I'm just an ordinary person sent by Zaya country." Bob chuckled twice. When answering Andre's question, he deliberately emphasized the word ordinary person. Hearing Bob's answer, Andre tried to regain his composure and said, "Now I believe that you are someone sent by Zaya country. Because if it were an ordinary local resident, let alone have the courage to lie that you are from Zaya country to meet him, even if you have the courage, it is impossible to see through his thoughts at a glance. Only those people from Zaya country have such wisdom and courage. However, as for Bob's identity, he believed that he was sent by Zaya country and could not be a Zaya country person. After all, the characteristics of Zaya country people have long been known to the world. He has not heard of a precedent of a local person becoming a Zaya country person. Even if they are people from Gihua City, Zaya country has already stated that these people are not Zaya country people. Andre's attitude towards Bob has changed 360 degrees. He even changed his self-proclaimed name from the lofty this Viscount to the ordinary I. If he was facing ordinary local residents, he could still be lofty, but if he met people from Zaya or people closely related to Zaya, he would not have the capital to be arrogant with his current status. Since you believe in my identity, it will be easy. Bob nodded with satisfaction and asked, can you answer the question just now? The better Bob's achievements are now, the more loyal he is to Zaya, because he knows that everything he has now comes from Zaya. If he was just an ignorant refugee before, how could he have the glory he has now? Andre sighed heavily and replied, even if I don't want to, what can I do? Lanny Parker controls all my troops, and he even has people in this castle. Besides, even if I want to be independent, how can I be sure that Zaya will support me? How can I believe what you say? Andre said truthfully what he thought. You know, if this fails, I will die miserably. Hearing Andre's series of concerns, Bob couldn't give a specific answer now. He thought of the information passed to him by Zaya, so he had to say, it is normal for Your Excellency the Viscount to have these concerns. Doesn't this prove that you have great ambitions? Well, I can't give you a practical promise now, and no matter how much I say, it's better to prove my words with actual performance. Bob finally said, after a while, Your Excellency will see the sincerity of our Zaya country. I hope that by then you won't be as hesitant as you are now. After saying this, Bob said goodbye to Andre, covered his face, and left the castle in a low-key manner. He shook off those Lamé followers on the street, returned to the base, reported the results of his actions today to Zaya, and marked a yes after Andre's name on the list. Actions like Bob's were staged everywhere in Philomet. Some of them would capture Zaya's intelligence personnel who wanted to show their loyalty to Parker, but in the end they were all rescued by other intelligence personnel of Zaya, and they also took revenge by the way. The most powerful one even annihilated the family of the former lord who wanted to take credit, so that these ignorant former lords knew the consequences of offending Zaya. After that, when the war between Philomet and Zaya broke out, many of the dignitaries paid attention to it, and once the result of the war came out, their choice would come out. The performance of the Zaya army in the war lived up to the reputation of Zaya outside the Great Wall. When the news that the Zaya army defeated the Philomet army and broke through Penguin City reached their ears, these former lords who had their own ideas suddenly became excited. Chapter 347 Falling Apart. It was still the same room, and the same two people. Bob, with a proud face, asked Andre who remained silent, Sir, can you tell me what your choice is now? Andre did not say anything, but just sat there with his head propped up in silence. After Bob finished speaking, he also sat quietly opposite him, waiting for his answer. For a moment, the small and dim room seemed to become even darker, because of the silence. I don't know how long it took, maybe a minute, maybe half an hour. Andre finally raised his head, his eyes were full of determination, and that moment seemed to brighten up the dim room. Since your Zaya country has invaded the Free Might country, I will choose to start an independent army. I hope that your Zaya country will not forget today's promise. Bob heard Andre's reply, smiled with satisfaction, and thought to himself that it was as expected. He nodded and replied, that's for sure. Now I'm dissatisfied with you, Excellency. Our Zaya country's decision is to capture Nanshan City and take Lanny Parker's former land to the Baxter country. So that's the case. Andre was completely relieved, and he completely believed that Bob was a Zaya country man. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible for them to know Zaya country's purpose. Haha, don't worry, sir. We in Zaya country always keep our word. Bob laughed twice, thought for a while and said, well, since you have made a decision, I will give you a personal gift. After that, he took out a piece of paper from his arms and handed it to Andre. Andre took the specialty paper of Zaya country in confusion, looked at the content on it, and asked in surprise after reading it, "What is this?" "Yes, it's what you thought." Bob smiled and replied, "What is recorded here is the name of the place arranged by the Kingdom of Folimet in your territory. I hope it will be helpful to you." "That's great." Andre held the paper tightly, fearing that it would disappear. After being happy, Andre thought about the identity and ability of the man in front of him, thought about it, and finally made a bold decision in his heart. "Sir, I wonder if I have the honor to invite you to serve as a staff officer of my country." After seeing Bob's ability, Andre had the gift that the other party had given him, plus Bob's identity as a Zaya countryman. He had the idea of letting the other party work for him, so he urgently thought of a new official position. Although Bob didn't know what this so-called staff officer did, it can be seen from the name that it was an official position for making suggestions, but he didn't dare to accept it. No, Zaya country will definitely know. If he really accepted the high-ranking official given by other forces, he didn't even dare to think about the consequences after Zaya country knew it. That's absolutely not possible. Bob waved his hand and refused hastily. Then he felt that his words were too heartless, and then explained, "I appreciate your kindness, but our Zaya country has a rule that we cannot accept invitations from other forces. I hope you can understand my difficulties." Andre originally wanted to tie Bob to his side, wanting to please the Zaya country, and by the way, he could also use the other party's ability to do things for him. After hearing Bob's firm refusal and explanation, he said with regret, "Since your Zaya country has a rule, then I won't embarrass you. Thank you for your understanding." Then Bob discussed the time of the uprising and other important matters with Andre, and then said goodbye and left. After returning to the base, Bob immediately passed the information about Andre's uprising to the Zaya country, and by the way, he also told Andre's invitation to him. He didn't want to test the Zaya country. After all, the Zaya country was sharp-eyed and sharp-eared, and no one knew it better than him and his intelligence personnel. When the army of Zaya Kingdom was approaching the Nanshan city, Andre and several other former lords in Folimet who actively responded to Zaya Kingdom launched an action on the same day, arrested the people of Folimet and declared independence, no longer loyal to Folimet. As for becoming a small lord after independence, these former lords were unwilling to do so. They felt that even the smallest monarch was still a monarch, and he should be much better than the original lord. Another valuable vase of Zaya Kingdom was smashed to the ground by Parker. He didn't care at all that his several gold coins flew away, but shouted loudly, "How dare they? How dare they betray this monarch? This monarch will arrest them all and kill them all." After hearing the news in Nanshan City, Parker was almost crazy with anger and vowed to send troops to arrest these rebellious and self-determined people. But after being angry, thinking of the Zaya army outside the city, he could only sit on the ground in despair. If the army of Zaya State was not outside the city and wanted to attack him, he would definitely send troops. Even if it was not possible now, he swore that he would not let these people go. After defeating Zaya State, the army of Zaya State just stayed in a place not too far south of Nanshan City, neither attacking nor retreating. The actions of the army of Zaya State completely confused Parker, but the news he received one after another made him understand why the Zaya army acted. Okay, I didn't expect that it has only been a few days, and you all rebelled one by one. Parker sat on the throne in the hall, and was furious at the dignitaries in the hall. It turned out that Parker had received news of many nobles rebelling and establishing themselves in the past few days. Even just now, the news that the last lord who surrendered to him declared independence reached his ears. In this way, except for the land directly ruled by him, all the nobles who were in Fiaft became independent, and even some of the nobles who were newly in Fiaft by him, because of their merits, also declared independence. At this point, in addition to the newly occupied land of the former Baxter Kingdom, his original base camp only had a slightly larger piece of land than the original Nanshan territory in his hands. The reason why the former Baxter Kingdom land was still in his hands was because he stationed most of his troops there to prevent the rebellion of the local dignitaries, and even because of this, he couldn't come back in time to defend against the attack of the Zaya Kingdom. Unexpectedly, this drawback allowed Parker to still have such a large piece of land in his hands, and it was unknown whether it was a blessing or a curse. Because of Parker's anger, the dignitaries were all silent, fearing that they would get into trouble. It was at this moment that Buck suddenly stepped forward and spoke in front of the eyes of many dignitaries who were first surprised and then relieved. "Your Majesty, things have come to this point. I dare to suggest moving the capital." Parker was about to glare, wanting to see who was so blind as to dare to offend him at this time, but when he saw it was Buck, he took a deep breath and tried to ask calmly, "Tell me in detail." "Yes, Your Majesty," Buck explained. "According to my speculation, the actions of the Zaire army outside the city are to assist those traitors and let their country fall apart, so that they can defeat our country without any effort. Therefore, I suggest that before the traitors' army arrives, Your Majesty, go ahead and choose a fortified city in the east as the new capital." Parker understood what Buck meant, which was to ask him to escape, which he was very unwilling to do. Moreover, when he heard that those rebellious nobles were going to send troops to attack him, he could not help but said angrily, "They dare." Chapter 348, Escape from the City. Buck laughed bitterly twice and asked, "What else are they afraid of?" Parker was silent this time, because he suddenly thought that, if it were him, he would also take advantage of the Zaire army's attack to send troops together and destroy the other side in one fell swoop. Even if he couldn't, he would give them a heavy blow. After thinking it through, Parker was silent for a while and whispered to Buck, "What should we do? Is it not possible to just move? Is there no other way?" Buck shook his head slowly and firmly, answering Parker's question silently. He originally disagreed with attacking Zaire, and now that he was in trouble, he had no other choice but to run for his life. Buck knew that the situation was irreversible from the moment he knew that the former lords had rebelled. If there were only these rebellious former lords, without the participation of the Zaire army, even if they were given a few courage, they would not dare to rebel. The digestion of the Philimid kingdom over the years is not as simple as it seems. It was because when Zaire state counterattacked Philimid state, these former lords suddenly rebelled together, and they had not received any news. It was obvious that it was Zaire state who did it. Therefore, Buck knew that, no matter what he did now, it would be useless. It would be better to leave this place early and stay away from Zaire state to make a comeback. But Parker didn't think so. He didn't want to leave Nanshan City. This was his old nest. If he really went to the east, he didn't know if he could still have the glory he has now. But now he was in front of him. If he didn't leave, he would die. If he left, he would still have a chance. Parker had to nod reluctantly with an ugly face and said, "That's it, Buck. I'll leave it to you to arrange it." "Yes, Lord." Seeing that Parker finally made the right choice, Parker immediately accepted the order, but sighed secretly in his heart. If Parker had listened to him earlier, how could this day come? Outside Nanshan City, in the central army tent of the Zaire State Army, all the generals gathered to discuss or listen to Li Jing's orders. According to intelligence, the western part of the Philimid kingdom has already fallen apart. Now it is one city, one country, one town, and one territory. Only the Nanshan City in front of us is still resisting. Li Jing briefly explained the current situation of the enemy country to everyone. According to the plan, when the armies of the independent countries arrive, it will be the time for the general attack. As for the reason, everyone knew why after a little thought, and no one asked why they had to wait for these troops to arrive before attacking. Li Jing saw that everyone already knew it, so he ordered, for now, order the entire army to rest, and order the hub AOC to do the essential work, and don't slack off. "Yes, General." The Zaire Kingdom's stop made Parker embarrassed. He was preparing to escape from the city. Wouldn't the Zaire army's stop make him embarrassed? If Parker ran away now, he would have to bear the reputation of running away at the sight of the enemy. If he ran away when the Zaire Kingdom was attacking the city, he could still say that he was defeated by the enemy and retreated. Now he had no reason to run away before the battle. "Buck, do you think I can leave now?" Parker called Buck and asked him without thinking. Buck was stunned when he heard this unreasonable question, but then he immediately reacted and thought about it and replied, "My lord, I think it is better to leave now. Otherwise when the Zaire army launches an attack, I will not be able to leave, even if I want to." Parker also knew this truth, but what about his reputation? Is he going to save his face? Even if he doesn't care in his heart, Parker still has to maintain his attitude as a monarch on the surface. It's just that the Zaire army is not attacking the city now, so it's unreasonable for the monarch to leave like this. Buck continued to speak in Parker's face full of approval, so the monarch only needs to leave an important and loyal knight to lead the defense of Nanshan City. Why is that? Parker finally interrupted at this time and asked immediately, can leaving a knight save the reputation of this monarch? Exactly. Buck replied, in this way, the monarch can declare to the outside world that the monarch is going to get reinforcement, and when the monarch returns will depend on when the reinforcement arrive. Haha, that's good, that's good. After listening to Buck's plan, or the way to escape, Parker finally solved the huge stone in his heart, and finally he could go get reinforcement with confidence. As for the important and loyal knight, Parker didn't think much, and decided that it was Parlant. Only Parlant had this qualification, and Parlant, the defeated general, had to stay. On the same day, Parker gave Parlant instructions according to Buck's instructions, asking him to guard Nanshan City and he would go to the east to get help. Parlant didn't know what he meant, and thanked Parker for not blaming him. He didn't know that he had actually become a scapegoat. When the rebels arrived dozens of kilometers outside Nanshan City, Parker took Buck and several other important dignitaries who were loyal to him, their family property, and all the elite troops, and left Nanshan City under the cover of night, leaving Parlant with only an empty city for the old, weak, sick and disabled. When the rebels surrounded Nanshan City the next day, Parlant went to Parker so that his monarch could break out and get help in time, only to find that the castle had long been deserted, and even Buck and other important dignitaries had disappeared. At this time, no matter how stupid Parlant was, he knew that he had been abandoned by his monarch. It was in vain that he was still thinking about Parker at the last moment. Parlant couldn't help but feel that the whole world had left him. He didn't see the essence of this world as clearly as he does now. Ha ha ha. They ran away. All of them ran away. Parlant sat decadently at the gate of a grand manor, looking at the red sky. He had no thoughts, only despair and despair like falling into the abyss. He even ignored the shouts and screams outside the city and the reports from the guards. Parlant just wanted to be quiet now. Without Parlant's command, the defenders of the city were only the old, weak and sick. How could Nanshan City defend against the rebels who were determined to kill Parker? In less than an hour and a quarter, the shouts and screams went from outside the city to inside the city, and gradually got closer. By the time the rebels found Parlant, he had already passed away quietly forever on the stone steps at the door. When Li Jing learned that the rebels paraded Parlant's body through the streets, he ordered a messenger, tell them that we in Zaire want Parlant's body. Although as an opponent, Parlant was not remarkable, as a subject, Li Jing still saw Parlant's loyalty. Until the last moment, Parlant was in such a desperate situation, he did not betray Parker. This was something that Li Jing and others admired very much. It was no problem to bury him in peace. I wish you all a happy new year. May all your wishes come true and everything goes well. In addition, it's the new year, and I really can't guarantee updates. Sorry, I can only update when I have time. Please forgive me. Chapter 349. All living things are like chess. Generals Deking, Lu Su, Yan Ren, Hu Okubang and others found Li Jing on the southern city wall of Nanshan City. Deking was the first to report. General Nanshan City has been captured. Yes. Li Jing nodded in response, looked at the black smoke and flames floating everywhere in Nanshan City, turned to face the generals, and asked, how are our casualties? Hearing Li Jing's question, Lu Su stepped forward and clasped his fists and replied, General, this siege was entirely led by the coalition forces outside the pass, and our army suffered no casualties. Very good. Li Jing was very satisfied with this. It would be unreasonable if the Zaire army was only responsible for playing a supporting role and still suffered casualties. After Liuqi and others had resolved Li Jing's issues, he stepped forward to report, General, the leaders of the rebel coalition forces requested to see you, saying that they want our army to seek justice for them. Seek justice? Li Jing asked puzzledly. Seek justice for what? Liuqi clasped his fists and replied, General, it is said that one force wants to pursue the monarch of Falimet, while another force does not want to pursue them anymore. In addition, regarding the land that Falamet has established, the various forces are also arguing over its territory, and they want our country to take charge of the situation for them. Haha. Hearing Liuki's words, Li Jing smiled contemptuously. He finally understood what these indigenous forces wanted to do. It was just the uneven distribution of the spoils, and the forces closer to Falamet were worried about Falamet's retaliation. They were all disputes over interests. It would be strange if they didn't quarrel. Li Jing waved his hand and said, "Let's go. I'll go and see what they want to do." When Li Jing was really there, he realized how lively the scene was. All the big and small forces were crowded together, and they were quarreling behind closed doors. Li Jing and his men couldn't hear what they were saying at all. Silence, silence. Lu Su shouted at the chaotic scene, but no one was willing to listen, no one cared, and no one could hear it. Li Jing frowned at this, and without saying a word, he took out his short musket and fired at the ceiling. With a bang, the loud noise made these people quiet down immediately and finally made them see the presence of Li Jing and his men. A nearby indigenous dignitary immediately bowed to Li Jing and his men and said, "Ah, distinguished generals of the Xia Kingdom, you are finally here." This is a translation, because there is no word general in the indigenous language, and generally the commanders of the army are knights, so these indigenous leaders directly call the generals of the Xia Kingdom knights. However, the translators of Xia country usually translate this word into general to avoid sounding awkward. However, in the indigenous society, knight is not just a general who leads the army, but also has its corresponding social status and interests, so it cannot completely replace general. Now come one by one, tell me what happened. Li Jing put the musket back into his waist with an expressionless face, facing the many shocked leaders present, and asked softly, "I'll go first, I'll go first." Andre squeezed through the crowd to the front row and said loudly, "This respected general of the Xia Kingdom, it's like this. I used to be a lord in the north of Nanshan City. Under the heroic leadership of the Xia Kingdom army, we captured Nanshan City of the Fulamite Kingdom. Now, I want to continue to pursue the fleeing monarch of the Fulamite Kingdom, so that this land can be restored to its previous state, but some people don't want to do this, and just want to go back. They don't want to think about it. Aren't they afraid that the Fulamite Kingdom will come back for revenge?" As soon as Andre's voice fell, another lord immediately retorted loudly, "I don't have many troops. Even if I chase them, I can't win. Besides, isn't there a powerful Xia Kingdom? I believe that the Fulamite Kingdom will not watch the Fulamite Kingdom attack us again." That's right, that's right. I don't have many troops either, and the powerful Xia Kingdom will definitely not stand by and watch us die. But the Fulamite Kingdom still has hundreds of thousands of troops. If we don't attack now, we won't have this opportunity in the future. After listening for a long time, Li Jing and others finally understood. Just like what Liuki said, these people are roughly divided into two factions. One faction is a relatively powerful force that wants to launch a pursuit in order to obtain more land. There are those who want to use this to become the second or third Fulamite country. The other faction is a relatively weak force. Now that they have successfully driven away the monarch of Fulamite, they don't want to waste their strength again, so as not to make wedding clothes for others. Everyone. Li Jing pressed his hand to the people present, signaling them to be quiet, and said, "Do you have any misunderstandings about our country's military deployment this time?" Li Jing saw that these people were full of doubts about his words, and then said, "This time, our country is only a counterattack against the invasion of Fulamite. At this time, the purpose of punishment has been achieved. The troops will be withdrawn and returned to the country soon, but they are not here to uphold justice for you." "But didn't Xia support us to be independent? Why are you saying this now?" When Andre heard this, his face was shocked and incredible. If it weren't for the support of Xia's actions, how could he dare to be independent? Haha, yes, our country supports your independence, but we are not here to uphold justice for you. You should solve your own problems, including the revenge of the Fulamite country, Li Jing explained hurriedly. He didn't want these people to misunderstand Xiao's intentions. Although Xiao has always conveyed such an image of punishing the strong and supporting the weak, it is not so simple between countries. How can this be? What should I do now? I knew that Xia was unreliable. I would not have established myself if I had known. Li Jing saw that everyone was panicked by his words, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and then he said, "After all, you supported the country. It's not good to let Philomet swallow it again. Yes, isn't this looking down on the powerful Zaya? Dear General Zaya, please help us. I knew that the powerful Zaya would not stand by and watch us die." The rapid change before and after made Li Jing and others feel funny. These people really have the face of villains. They flatter when there is benefit and speak ill of others when there is no benefit. Therefore, this general suggests that you should unite first to resist the attack of Philomet. If you have spare strength, you can also launch an attack on Philomet, and our country will not pursue it at all. Li Jing's words seemed to be still doing justice for these people, but in fact there was no practical content at all, and he also put Zaya in a transcendent position. These words of his were not what he wanted to say. These were all discussed in advance in Zaya's state, and were instructed by Yang Song. After all, Li Jing was in the military department, and he could not interfere in politics. In Zaya's state's plan, the power of Philomet was to be reduced by half, and these independent forces were indispensable chess pieces. In order to prevent Parker's revenge, these independent forces must have the idea of taking advantage of your illness to kill you, especially when the Zaya State Army was still there, but the Zaya State Army would not participate more. In addition, the purpose of this plan is to further reduce the indigenous population of the land outside the pass. If there is no conflict, then create a conflict, and war is a way to quickly reduce the population. This is also the reason why Zaya State plans to split Philomet, and these forces outside the pass that have become independent from Philomet must rely on the help of Zaya State under the oppression of Philomet's revenge. At that time, Zaya State will have control over this land outside the pass. Another purpose of the plan. The new order outside the pass must be formulated by Zaya State, which is another reason for this war. Only when it hurts can you know who is the most powerful. P.S. This period is a bit special. I hope everyone is in good health and full of energy. Chapter 350, Vassal Plan. Regarding Li Jing's proposal for a long-term alliance, the people present and the people standing nearby looked at each other and all remained silent, not knowing whether they agreed or disagreed. Regardless of what others thought, Andre was very happy to hear that Zaya would not care about their forces. He thought that after the matter of the Freemite country was resolved, he would take advantage of the fact that there were only small forces around to launch a wave of annexation wars. However, when Andre heard the proposal of this knight who was obviously in a high position in Zaya, he hesitated. After all, the threat of Freemite was in front of him, and he could not have ignored it. So Andre is also very hesitant now. He wants Zaya to really stop caring, and he also wants Zaya to help them resist the revenge of Freemite, but he knows that such a good thing does not exist in the world. Although Andre knew that it was impossible to have the best of both worlds, some people did not think so. A sentence suddenly came to mind in the silent crowd. Then Zayago, why don't you stop the revenge of Philomet? As soon as this was said, everyone looked over. The person who asked this question did not expect that his question would attract everyone's attention. The suspicious, surprised eyes made him shrink instinctively, and he didn't know where to put his hands, feet, and eyes. When Andre saw that this person was a young teenager, he understood a little. It was estimated that this was a lord who had just taken office not long ago and wanted to highlight his presence in this occasion. Although this young lord made this childish and ignorant speech, the other leaders of the forces looked at this person for a few times and then turned their eyes to Li Jing again, wanting to see what Li Jing had to say. They still had a fluke about this. Li Jing had a different idea about this question. He guessed. No, he was sure that the person who asked this question must have been instructed by the Xiago intelligence personnel, otherwise no one would ask such a ridiculous and timely question. Your problems should be solved by our country. There is no such easy thing in the world, but, although Li Jing smiled in his heart, he still answered seriously on the surface. But as long as this matter becomes our Zaya country's business, then our country's attack on the Philomet country is an obligation. When Andre heard the first half of Li Jing's words, he secretly said in his heart, as expected. The little disappointment made him feel a little incredible. But when he heard the second half of Li Jing's words, he was looking forward to it again. Just when he was about to ask how to make this matter a matter of Xia country, someone asked the question before him. Then how can this matter become a matter of Xia country? Andre looked carefully and found that the person who asked this question was still the young lord. This made him subconsciously feel a little unnatural about the situation in front of him, but he didn't pay attention to this at all and didn't feel it at all. That's a good question. Li Jing looked around at the leaders of many forces in the venue and said loudly, now your relationship with my Xia kingdom is unrelated, but as long as... At this point, Li Jing paused. Seeing that the people in the venue were impatient, but had to calm down their restlessness and wait for his next words, Li Jing raised the corner of his mouth and said, as long as you will become our own people, it will be easy. What does this mean? Is Xia kingdom going to annex us? Is Xia kingdom going to participate in the alliance? Everyone didn't understand what Li Jing meant by this. As soon as Li Jing finished speaking, these people began to ask each other, asking if anyone knew the specific meaning of this sentence, but the people around them didn't know, so they had to turn their attention to Li Jing again, waiting for his next words. I know you have doubts, but please be patient. Li Jing appeased the leaders of these forces, and then said to Lu Su beside him, Lu, you come and tell them what a vassal is. Yes, General. Lu Su clasped his fists and accepted the order. At first, he didn't know the plan discussed by Yang Song, Li Jing, and Liug. He listened for a long time before he got a general idea. He couldn't infer what Li Jing was up to with just a few words, but when he heard the word vassal, he immediately understood. Ahem. Lu Su stepped forward, cleared his throat first, and took the opportunity to quickly organize his words, and said loudly, the so-called vassal is a country that retains a certain sovereignty in name, but is actually subordinate to and subject to other countries in terms of internal affairs, diplomacy, and economy to a certain extent. Lu Su first explained to these natives what a vassal was in official terms. He knew that these people couldn't understand, so he explained it again in words that these natives could understand. After these people understood what a vassal state was, they all started to make a commotion, and the whole place was filled with words like impossible and disagree, all voices of opposition. Since you don't want to, then so be it. Our country will not forcibly intervene, but it is up to you to do it voluntarily. Li Jing had long known that these people would not give up until they reached the Yellow River, and after saying this, he took the people of Xia and left the venue. After Andre listened to Lu Su's explanation of the vassal state, he was also very shocked and terrified in his heart, fearing that this was a conspiracy by the Xia people to annex them. Just like the feudal system of the Fulimid country, he would never be able to return to the position of being above 10,000 people in the past. But he saw that the Xia people left without hesitation after saying that it was up to you to do it voluntarily, as if they were really not worried at all and really came to help them, which made him hesitate again. In the end, Andre's desire for power prevailed, and he did not become the first person to eat crabs. Oh. Andre sighed and thought to himself, these Xia people are really tricky. They have come up with another vassal state. What's wrong with their brains? Outside the meeting venue, Li Jing and his party walked out of the castle. The meeting venue was the castle hall of Nanshan City. At this time, Lu Su suddenly suggested, General, since they are unwilling to be a vassal of our Xia country, why not publicize that our army will return and will no longer be involved in matters outside the Great Wall? His staff officer Lu really has the same idea. It's a waste of your talent to let you be a staff officer of a brigade. If there is a chance, Li will recommend you to the king to return to the court. After listening to Lu Su's suggestion, Li Jing couldn't help but admire him for seeing so many things in limited information. Lu Su bowed his head modestly and clasped his fists, saying, General, you are too kind. I'm willing to serve the king and the Xia kingdom in the army, but my talent is nothing more than a bright moon and a firefly in the eyes of the general. From Li Jing's words, Lu Su knew that he didn't need to worry about this matter. Come to think of it, there is a wise and powerful king, and so many great talents in Cheyenne Key City. He felt that he was worrying too much. Moreover, he was an officer in the army. Now Lu Su thought about it, and realized that his words seemed to have crossed the line. Fortunately, he didn't say anything that shouldn't be said. Li Jing and others were also members of the army, and would not go into it. The next morning, the Xia Kingdom army outside Nanshan City broke camp and returned to Xia Kingdom under the complicated gazes of many people in Nanshan City. Although the Xia Kingdom army retreated to the country, Penguin City has always been in the hands of Xia Kingdom. Although Penguin City is now damaged and unusable due to the war, it is still a very good place to serve as a frontier outpost for Xia Kingdom. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.